And I'm very happy and excited and slightly scared, but in a good way, to be here for the second alt slash goth person of color panel. Being a person of color and also being an alternative or gothic or other uh, sort of style music listener or in another subculture, and experiences that we have, struggles that we go through, things that people might not know. Um, and yeah, very happy to be here with this amazing panel. And so yeah, we can go ahead and introduce yourself. Um, Whoever wants to jump in, go ahead.
I can start. Hi, I'm Anise. I'm also a goth. I wear elaborate, very extra gothy things on stream, and that's mostly what I do.
Hi, I'm Jupiter. I'm also very goth. As you can tell, probably very e-girl aesthetic. Um, Pulling out the cosplay wigs today for the ultimate RAR 2000s Rarger aesthetic, but yeah, I make video games and voice act. Hello, everybody.
Hey, I'm Lua. I have a YouTube channel called Professor Flowers, where I analyze media on there. And yeah, I like wearing goth clothes, but I don't always wear goth clothes. I don't know. It's just like one thing that I like, but there's a few other aesthetics that I also like to dress up as.
Awesome. We may be having one more person. Looks like we're a little bit. We might have one more person jump in, but we'll just jump straight into it. I think. So this is actually the second. This is the second. I just want to show up all of this vest that I spent all morning creating. I'm joking. I didn't create it. Holly, my partner, actually put this vest together. I'm trying to cosplay as a Stranger Things D&D playing person of color. Don't ask me why I'm doing that. I just felt like it. This is
Just
these
living your
are
life.
these are my ankh, and that is my pentagram that I got possibly from Hot Topic. But anyways, this is the second goth panel, and I was like, there's so much to talk about, and I think a lot of people had a lot of positive feedback to do with our experiences. There's a lot of discussion around this particular panel. I mean, not to say that the other panels are like something's different, but there's something like very there's a lot of feedback, and I think a lot of people there's still a lot to explore. I mean, last time we were touching on things like I think like one thing I noticed that was everybody had an experience of was feeling like we were the one person in the universe who was a person of color, or maybe we kind of subconsciously thought, but it kind of felt to me personally, it felt like I was the only person in the universe that's like a goth alternative weird person and also a person of color having that unique experience, and nobody else knows that. Like, I'm the only person. But then we're like, no, actually, the things that you're saying, Silver Spook, I have this experience, and I'm from like, you're in Hawaii, but I'm in like California, or I'm in Michigan. I'm like far away, or not even in the U.S., and I have a similar experience to that. And I thought that was like something that was like very like powerful. I felt like it was very like something that I had never heard ever, and I'm like 39, and went through my whole life, and I do a lot of talking to a lot of people, but that's something that had never really come up. And each of these is a little unique. Of course, our experiences are unique, but yeah. Anyways, so I just wanted to kind of like throw that, just kind of started with that because that's kind of where we left off. And I know like Lua, you had kind of a few things that you kind of like this particular thing I kind of wanted to talk about. So I don't know if you want to just kind of lead with that.
Yeah, is it the thing that I was talking about, like feeling um, like it was like this identity of like something that was like kind of like dark or bad that I could like just that was like already acceptable in some way.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think for me like also something that like drew me to goth or an alternative style is that just growing up, like I like people were always very suspicious of me. Just like parents didn't want me hanging out with their kids and things like that because they were very wary of seeing a black person. And so there was a way where like I feel like I heavily identify with being some type of outcast, and also like as someone who's just kind of like seen as like inherently bad. And so I think for me, like dressing in an alternative style is a way where I can kind of own that and be like, well, yeah, like I am like this idea of darkness, and actually it's really beautiful. And there was this way that I could kind of like there was something already there that I could like fit into, or at least try to fit into. I think, like we were talking last time, like I still don't fit into that as a Black person, but when I was younger, I didn't really understand like how complicated it was going to be, because I'm just, a kid trying these different styles out. But yeah, I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that.
I can say I definitely felt pretty similar experiences. And I know I touched a lot about this last panel, but I think coming from to goth aesthetics as an outcast is a pretty relatable feeling, but especially just feeling out of place everywhere you go. I know when I was growing up, I went to predominantly white schools as a half white, half Hispanic individual, and partially because like elements of intersectionality and race analysis were never things that I got as a kid, and I was always given like an arm's length from my own Mexican identity just because of the way my parents tended to raise me. And because of that, I didn't really have a lot of the language to say why I felt disconnected from a lot of my peers who came up from a really different cultural background. And it was very frustrating as a kid to not understand like what is not clicking. Why does there why is there like this league of difference between me and everyone else? And at least with goth aesthetics, I kind of looked at it as I could try to fit in with everyone else, to try to reach this ideal of what it's like to be a good white person, and I would fail no matter what, because it's just really high standards and a lot of pressure put on anybody. But with goth aesthetics, at the very least, I felt like I'm not trying anymore to meet my peers at their level. I'm trying to go my own way, and that felt really empowering to me. It also helped that goth aesthetics tended towards being a way to vent a lot of these negative thoughts and this kind of angry tendency I felt. I'm not a very angry person, but there's obviously this thought of I am pissed that I don't belong with everybody else. And at least with goth aesthetics, it feels like being that depressed angry person was a bit more acceptable, or at least didn't cause this facade of a presentation to fall apart. That kind of went a whole bunch of places, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's fine. Yeah, no, it's being you can yeah, so you can be upset, you can be angry, you can feel your feelings, and it's not unacceptable in yeah, a lot of these subcultures. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Does anyone else have anything else you want to add to the bad being bad? Because I have my own like little thing I wanted to go, but it's I actually wanted to cite something. So if anyone else wants to jump in on that.
I just wanted to mention that when I initially kind of accidentally stumbled into sort of the emo girl aesthetic, it is the stereotypical like sad girl writes sad poetry, but it was like a nice place to process being depressed or mental illness, especially as a person of color, because like, you know, on top of generational trauma kind of placing expectations for you to be academically excel and like even being the quote unquote, model minority, um, there is that pressure that you're not allowed to um invoke or express like mental illness. Even to this day, like, like looking at how we talk about a mental illness, it's always framed with white bodies in mind, and we never talk about the very complicated history of how people of color might have historical relationships with the medical field, that's also grounded in racism, or reasons why people are very hesitant to go to doctors and stuff like that, or the inability to access doctors. So to me, it's like a weird aesthetic of like being able to vent and process that sort of like depression as a teenager, and being able, especially when you're like, being brown myself, I never really had the words to realize I was depressed. But I'm like, this speaks to me in a way of, yes, I'm very sad. And to bring up in last, you know, in the last panel where we talk about how like a lot of these goth aesthetics have like a lot of these people processing their anger and depression without really having the words or the idea of the system itself to direct it at, you know, that definitely was like I kind of fell into like, yeah, this was definitely a space that helped me start processing that mental illness. So yeah.
Yeah, I do just want to say like one thing about like mental health. I think it's interesting that like I feel like so many people of color like have all these mental health issues because, and then I think a part of it is also like dealing with racism. And it really frustrates me that white people are often focused on in the conversation of mental health. And it's like, yeah, I just feel like if you start unpacking all these mental health problems that like, you know, Black people have, for example, then it would just be like wild. Yeah.
God, the amount of times we have to do emotional labor for our white allies, am I right? Has been a big thing that takes a toll on mentally. And also, and it's like when I'm dressed as goth, like, don't talk to me, don't expect me to hold your hand. That kind of intimidation of like, I ain't doing the emotional labor for you was kind of like invigorating to have aesthetically. Of like, no one's gonna approach you and expect you to be nice all the time because it really does kill you when you do so much emotional labor in a system that doesn't care about you mentally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to add on that. I also like that the aesthetics of goth attire gave me a way to express that depression and frustration in a climate where I feel it's very hard to talk about your mental health to other people as a person of color. I know I was typically the type of person that people would come to for help, like that emotional labor you say of looking after your white peers, but it was also kind of ingrained in me a lot to not really show my emotions because that would have made me seem like less or weak in an environment where I'm already at a disadvantage. So when you're in the state where you can't talk to anybody about your mental health and there's no system that's going to help you kind of recover or be able to deal with these emotions, it was nice just to wear clothes that said, hey, I'm an unhappy person. I'm not having a good time right now. If I act happy, if I have to maintain this facade of being a perfect straight A student or just the most well mannered person I can be, I at least want my clothes to, hint at the fact that no, that is a facade. That is not the true me in a sense.
Yeah, I just wanted to welcome Ryendys, our fifth all goth POC is here. Thanks for making it.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. So, anyways, just to catch everybody, if you catch you up real quick, we're just discussing mental health in relation to being an alternative and/or goth a person of color. I wanted to just quick. This is like somewhat related, but not exactly. But this is something particular for me that I just discovered about. It's another thing that I was like reading about my own. I mean, if you don't know me, I'm Native Hawaiian. That's the Kanaka Maoli, one of the flags representing our. There's another flag for the sovereign country of Hawaii, but specifically for as a Native Hawaiian in the U.S. occupation of Hawaii and somebody who is kind of like I talked about last time about how we're kind of forced Americanization within just my parents' generation even, and there's this interesting thing I just read that this is actually I feel like this is part of my mental health or lack thereof in high school has directly.
I'm trying to figure out how to. Do I just turn it on?
I can hear you now. Or your camera?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out my camera.
Oh yeah, just enable your camera. I think not sure.
It'll be
Go
on,
to
like,
the bottom left. There's like a little camera symbol, and then you can do turn on your camera.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try.
Yeah, so you should be on the bottom left. There you go. Oh, I think you're coming on there. There you go.
Okay.
Yay.
Right.
Background, the purple lighting's very lovely.
Well done.
You.
Anyway, so I'll just finish this up, but I'm trying to make this fast. But I was reading this book. It's called, I'm sorry, I was like observing someone else who's reading this book and I had an excerpt from it. It's called Define Indigeneity, The Politics of Hawaiian Performance, or Performing Hawaiianness. Anyways, so, I mean, like I was talking about how like I was expected to, like, either you had to perform your Hawaiianness or you could perform your Americanness, which would mean performing mainstream Americanness, right? Which was like, just to, I like my dad was like a very much a hippie liberally type person. So he's like, oh yeah, no, do the alternative rock band stuff because that's Americanness and that's good. You don't want to be Hawaiian. That's bad. That's like unacceptable. Or you could be Hawaiian, but you can be like somebody who's going to dance the hula for $7 an hour in Waikiki. But that's not paying very highly. So what you want to do is like perform this weird version of Americanness. But anyways, so this is something that I was like reading, and it was like that's directly related to kind of like, and so it's kind of like I was always like I was feeling like I was like nowhere in the world. I'm just like, what is my identity? I don't know. Like my mom's saying you're this, you're a Catholic, you're an American Catholic, very strongly Christian, and my dad was like, you're like a hippie, cool dude, Catholic, liberal rock and roll player. And then other people are like, well, you're not Hawaiian enough to be Hawaiian. So you can't come to the canoe club and you can't be part of this. Because Hawaiianness means dancing the hula this way, which is not even actually like, anyway. So this is a little excerpt I want to read really quickly from the book. It said, for Hawaiians, Kanaka Maoli, that's Native Hawaiians, who do not perform tradition or revitalization in obvious ways to express Hawaiian indigeneity, continue to be unacknowledged or even ostracized for their cultural relevance by the dominant public performers, especially. So, and they specifically referred to, this person said, during my time as a performer in Hawaii's underground music scene, which I performed it. I used to, when I started that glam rock look that I was doing last time, where I had the long red and black hair and I looked like I'm going to, be in the emo scene on Tumblr circa 2005. I would play music like in the alternative underground Hawaii scene, which is like 3 layers of alternative. It's really weird because like American culture is already alternative to the actual Hawaiian culture. Then it's alternative to American culture. Anyway, so I was playing, and this person said I was playing music in this underground Hawaiian music scene in the 90s and 2000s like me. And I met many Kanaka Maoli Native Hawaiians who expressed that being involved in certain kinds of music, looking a certain way, being alternative like what I look like now, made their Hawaiian indigeneity suspect. People would question why they like certain things, why they are acting white, why when they like hip hop, they want it to be black, which is also not Hawaiian. So you can't like either of those things. And why they didn't dance hula, and you have to dance hula, the Waikiki hula, which is not the real hula. It's a hyper-sexualized hula. It's like, it's a really kind of plastic cellophane grass skirt fake hula. It's not even real hula. Real hula is like empowering. It's not done for rich tourists in building our own resorts, in Waikiki. And so if you didn't perform that hula, you would not count it as Hawaiian. And then we're like, well, I don't want to perform that hula. It's fake hula. I want to make rock music about how our country is illegally occupied and you're committing genocide by banning my language. And they said, well, that's not Hawaiian. So you can't do that. Anyway, so I'm talking for a long time, but I think that explained a lot of like why, like, I don't know. It's just a thing. I just read this in the last week and I was like, oh my God, that's like my experience. It's like trying to communicate, because indigeneity is not just like dancing dancing hula all day long, like reservation. I mean, I love the Taika Waititi movies because like I'm basically like the other Taika Waititi from Hawaii. It's like being Hawaiian does not mean all day long we just dance hula all day long. And it, like Molly from Denali, if I take off my traditional Eskimo my traditional Inuit or my traditional indigenous wear, I don't suddenly stop being indigenous. It's like indigenous people wear jeans sometimes, and then they wear other things, and then it doesn't stop them being indigenous. If Taika Waititi puts on a suit, he doesn't stop being Maori, right? But that's the way that it was perceived for me when I was growing up in high school and in college and then after. It's like, if you take off your Hawaiian hula skirt or you take off your aloha shirt, now you're too white. And if you put the hula skirt back on, well, now you're an impoverished Hawaiian. But it's good, because that's what. Anyways, so anyway, that's just a lot. I'm saying that's just things that I've recently realized. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird because for me, like when I wear goth clothes, like or like even like when I like nerdy things, too off topic, but like like it's weird, like growing up, like me liking anime or liking more like alternative stuff, people would be like, oh, like you're really white. Like people would call me an Oreo. And but also I was like, I grew up around white people, but for me, like later on in life, it was actually like really cool to see that there are black goths. And there's also a lot of black people who like anime. Like it's almost like there's like an entire black culture around anime. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's weird because a lot of white people said it was a very white thing. It's like actually a lot of people just like anime. But yeah, I think it's like really frustrating when you're like not also like not black and not like for me like there's like a similar dynamic where like black people will see me and I won't be black enough for some black people. And it's just like really frustrating because like at the end of the day, like I am a black person and what I wear doesn't change my genes. So yeah, I don't know. I can just relate to that. It's just frustrating. You have like all these people telling you who you should be. I think that's like something that's like so frustrating about it. It's like you have like I for me like I would have white people tell me like, "Oh, you're black, which means that you're stupid and you're poor," even though like even though I grew up like in the same area that these white people did. They're like, "You're black and this is who you are." And that was just really jarring. And then when I would meet other black people, they would also tell me who I am, and it wasn't black enough. And it was just like, yeah, it was just like a really awful experience because you can't just be as a person.
Yeah, I just want to say I relate to that a lot as well. The not being able to be good enough as either for me a Mexican person or a white person. That either way, I guess when you are in this space where you are adopting an alternative fashion or an identity that goes outside of these racial categories that a lot of people put us into, I guess everything you do starts being really heavily critiqued and dissected. And it does suck that it ends up making you even more of an outcast in like not just inside of like white culture, but also like I guess just for me, I feel like because of my goth identity and a lot of my upbringing, because I also was raised a bunch of with a bunch of other white people, that I find exploring and engaging with my Mexican heritage to be very difficult. And I've always been called, like, I've been called a coconut all my life, even by my own family very often. And at some level, it just makes it so I just I feel like I've ended up in a space between these two worlds that both have heavy expectations that I can never really be a part of or feel like this identity is mine. At least with goth, I can feel like I have some ownership of that identity, that it's one, and there's still issues with it. I think goth, a lot of other, we were talking earlier in the first panel, of course, that the aesthetic of goth has a bunch of associations and expectations tied to it. But I also think it's a form of expression for me. And I feel like as long as I'm doing it in my way, I can feel like this is the identity that I feel nobody can tell me I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, I like that. I was thinking about when I was in elementary, middle school, high school, I never felt comfortable because of my body type and other things like uh wearing mainstream styles because they didn't fit my body, or maybe I felt like they looked inappropriate because I didn't have the same look as the people who were like pioneering those styles at the time. I mean, in mainstream media, not not where they actually originated. So, adopting an alternative style, you could play with it. It was always changing. Styles were they would grow out of um other genres of music, and so it was it was easier to find something that fit me instead of trying to fit into the mold of mainstream fashion.
I just wanted to bring up briefly about how, like, I think kind of for the topic of what Silver brought up about, like, when your identity, and you're kind of caught between either assimilation and non-assimilation kind of movements around it. I can say, like, especially in the Chicano movement, you know, because I have family from East LA and have been part of this, have been actively been part of parts of the protests for the Chicano movement, and like trying to have schools actively teach Mexican American identity into schools, because Mexican American is a very unique Latinx diaspora in the US that has its own history of like assimilation. But I think kind of out of that, and this kind of like in the criticisms of the Chicano movement, is that it does, I think, get into the end of you sort of have to perform your Mexican American heritage a lot. And that's where you get stuff like machismo and marimismo very prominent in a lot of Mexican American spaces. This expectation to like conform to these ideas of like traditionally this is how real Mexican should be. And I think like being goth, especially like being a queer goth, a Chicana, like allowed me to kind of have escapism from that part of that ethnic identity. As much as I'm like proud of my Mexican heritage, it's also like, yeah, there's like these very toxic mindsets that don't allow a lot of freedom, because they're still kind of tied to still generational trauma, or as well as colonial expectations of like beauty and whatnot. So it's like, yeah, being goth, and like, you know, because of that, it sort of gets me being goth, and also including my mom, who was also super into new wave in the 80s, kind of had her Mexicanness like questioned all the time. Like just the moment you just start wandering off from like this expected performance, you know, your ethnic identity immediately gets questioned. And that's definitely something very very wrong with the way that, I'm gonna blame it, whiteness kind of, whiteness as default kind of like claims these like fashions or topics as the default, and like all these other non-white people have their aesthetics, and if they touch that, then they're not that anymore. And I think, as Silver said, like the moment you stop taking off your like garbs or whatnot, you don't stop, you know, being indigenous, or you don't stop being a person of color, you don't stop being black. So it's it's very unfair, and it can be frustrating a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, that really frustrates me. Like, um, just I'm really jealous that like white people can like be like all these like different identities. Like white people can be like, oh, I want to like wear a hippie aesthetic, or oh, I want to try being goth, or I want to try like, there's just like all these different aesthetics that white people can just try, and it's like no questions asked. That's what you're gonna be trying on today. And then I think for me, it's like it felt like no matter what I did, like unless I wore clothes that reflected like white people's idea of black culture, like it was just weird. And I think for me that like that's something that like has still really stayed with me, of just like everything that I do, just like, at least to the white people I grew up with, like everything that I do is just like so weird and baffling and confusing. They don't know any black people, like, because they have idea of like what black people should be. If they see a black person wearing alternative clothes, like it's really like shocking to them and surprising, and they're confused because like they can't imagine that people of color uh are not like whatever racist idea that they have of them. And I still am not like really sure, like, I guess what to do with that, because I still feel like, even though I know that there's other black goths, and I follow like all these like black punk pages and things like that, like I still feel like so out of place, even though I'm like wearing this alternative style to express myself. Like I still feel like some sort of anomaly in some way, and I've never actually felt like I've blended in a way that I've just like for me, I actually would have liked to have just blended in. And I think for me, like that was just never an option. So it's just like, well, I'll just do what I like, and I like this aesthetic. And but yeah, I'm kind of jealous, like the way that white people can just like kind of pick whatever they want. And it's not controversial.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that real quick because that's something I remember I talked to Holly, my partner, about exactly that. I was talking about I'm trying to figure out like what is going on in like my own family and other people's heads. Like when they, because I talk about a little bit how my parents are like, they're more Asian and Pacific Islander, you know, they're basically Hawaiians, right? My dad, like, he's about the same skin tone as mine. He's a little more Asian-y. My mom's a little more Hawaiian, but they're not white, you know. But they view themselves as like white Christian people because of colonization, and specifically the schools are coming out as boarding schools in Hawaii. Kamehameha Schools is one of the biggest schools in Hawaii. It was one of the boarding schools, like the residential schools in Canada, that were used to do Christianization and banning of the language and the culture. And like physically, my mom was beaten. Like her knuckles are all weird and misshapen. And I just figured it out reading like another thread. All the people say, "Oh yeah, my grandma always rubs her knuckles when we talk Hawaiian language, and she doesn't want to talk about it." And that's why my mom's knuckles are all misshapen and like all deformed, and her fingers are all crooked, because they would they laugh about it. Oh, you know, kids were naughty in school, but it was beaten out of them, and they're like terrified. My mom is terrified of, like, we really talk serious about Hawaiian, and my dad too. They're terrified of even talking about it because they was physically beat. The Hawaiianness was beaten out of them. It was genocide. And so I'm like, what is going on in the heads of you guys? You know, how do you see yourselves? You know, it's a very weird thing, but I think part of it is my dad sees himself, and like people like him, people of that generation, and some of my generation too. They see themselves, like Lua kind of hear you saying, like, my dad, he just like picks and chooses. He's a hippie liberal. Like, he's like Californian. He went to school at Gonzaga. He's like, you know, he's surrounded by white professors at the University of Hawaii who are much better off than him. And like, he thinks that he's, you know, he talks and he acts in a way that sounds very white. Like, he can talk at a professorial level, and he's like, somehow they're able to accept him. And he talks about Hawaiianness like, oh yes, we have the myth of Maui, isn't that beautiful? Oh, and he like makes that, you know, like when liberals like read a New York Times article and it's like, oh yes, and oh, we do about police. Well, if we fund them a little more and something, and then they just make this, and he thinks of Hawaiianness as like a token accessory that he can put on for 5 minutes, you know? But then if he feels like, well, now I'm going to tell listen to the Sky Woman story about the Potawatomi that I just read in Braiding Sweetgrass, and let me tell you as if I invented it, to a party, and then he'll put that on, and then he might even put some, like, let me tell you about this blues story that I listened to on NPR about the origins of the blues, and I'm feeling very soulful right now. And it's like, Dad, what do you, if we could talk seriously about, no, but like, let's talk about who we are and our people. He's like, I can't talk about that. That's dangerous. Don't you know what happened to all those Hawaiian activists? They're all gone now. Can't talk about that. So like, anyway, so my point is kind of like that, like, you know, it is messed up though. It's like, it's unfortunate because if you have the access to the whiteness, you are the universal. So anything that you put on, if you put on your Indian headdress today, oh, that's really cute, Cherokee. You're like Pocahontas today. Oh, that's really cute. And everybody knows you're white. You're just white in a Pocahontas uniform. Oh, you're doing blues right now? You're a soulful blues musician, right? Making a lot of money stealing that. Oh, that's really good. In Hawaii, if you speak Hawaiian and you're white, it was fine. Actually, there's a lot of white. I was listening to another Native Hawaiian saying, why are there so many wealthy, well-to-do white people living in like the fancy resorts in Hawaii, like in Waikiki, and they speak Hawaiian, and their parents spoke Hawaiian, but it was just at the dinner parties. Like, they could say a little sentence in Hawaiian, like aloha, you know, and that was fine. But if my parents spoke it, they were beaten, right? And the white people will actually exclude Hawaiians, and they say, you're not Hawaiian enough. Why didn't you know how to speak it from birth? Well, we were beaten for speaking it. But it was cool for you, the WASP from Connecticut, or the Californian descendant of Dole. You could speak it because you had the privilege of your light skin and your narrow little nose and your nice straight hair. So when you spoke it, Hawaiian was a cool fashion accessory to the dinner parties when you weren't bombing Vietnam with your parents somewhere on an aircraft carrier. But for us, when we spoke it, we got beaten. And that's something that I think, like, even people today, descendants of these same Calvinist Puritan missionaries and the McKinleys and the colonizers and these rich, you know, Trustafarians that are like putting on rave concerts with their $50 million this year bonus they got from daddy working for the aircraft carrier, and mommy is working at the TV channel putting out propaganda. for CNN, and they still go, why aren't the Hawaiians all speaking Hawaiian properly? And they judge Hawaiians coming back from the mainland who've been displaced to like California and Vegas, and they're going, oh, I was just arguing with somebody. All the Hawaiians are all so brainwashed. They're not even Hawaiian anymore. I work in Vegas and I sell Hawaiians trinkets, and they're idiots. I don't know what you're still saying. What are you talking about? Indigenous people are gonna land back and help the world. Like Hawaiians they don't even understand their own language. And I'm like, dude, do you even know why?
Oh my gosh.
Do you know why?
Yes.
Anyways, I'm fucking pissed off. So yeah. Yeah.
It's okay, because I'll say it's cultural appreciation.
I think one of the things that seems to be coming up, and I guess I can phrase it in how I looked at my white peers in high school, I kind of saw that everybody around me had like a bit, like you said, Alua, like somebody could have been they're the hippie guy and they always dress in like these really garish shirts and, you know, are very laid back, or this other person, they're like a huge weeb and that's their entire like character trait. And I feel like in like a lot of white cultural spheres, racial and cultural identities have been typecast as characters in the same way that a lot of these like alternative interests are. And if you are like, for me, I felt like because I have this weird bifurcation of my identity trying to fit in this Mexican world and this white world, that I could never really fit neatly into any defined trait. And even when I tried to branch out and say, okay, I'm this person, like that's a thing that white people do. They can like put on and put off these traits and define themselves by it because whiteness is the default. And they can just modify that however they want. But if you're not white, when you do try to adopt these things, you're always told, oh, you're doing it wrong. Or it's always interrogated how you are incorporating that type into your personality. And I will say this led to a lot of depression when I was a kid. I always felt like, oh, everybody has this thing about them, this like core characteristic that I can just know belongs to them. And I don't have that. And because I didn't have an understanding, I'll be honest, throughout high school, I didn't even know my race was playing into this. I was told, you know, adopt a white, like just a completely white aesthetic and like tell people you're white. I was told by both my parents to say that I'm white on standardized tests in order to, you know, get a better access to scholarships and the like. And because of that, I was really distant from any understanding that what I was experiencing at the time was anything similar to racism. And I internalized it. I thought it was a personal failing, that I just wasn't good enough at enjoying the things I wanted to enjoy. And I don't know, I feel like this almost commodification and simplification of minority culture has given a lot of people imposter syndrome. It's at least given me imposter syndrome, where I to this day think everybody has this thing. Why can't I have it? Why can't I belong somewhere that I can say, yes, I slot into this? And I don't know, it's just very gratifying to hear that that's a relatable experience. So yeah.
I just want to say,
That's
I'm sorry if I
experience too. Sorry, Silver.
Oh no, it's okay. Just we're all just trying to fill the science. But no, I just want to say, like, you know, like sorry, I was like kind of went off on a extreme silver spook level that I didn't intend to go on. But you know, I do like it has recently like started to really strike home in a new way. And I think that, you know, the good thing is that I think we all can relate to this in some way, even though we don't have that exact experience. And that, Lou, I also wanted to say one more thing was that I know somewhere I think you recently said, like, you know, it's kind of like we have a different experience depending on like where we are, and like being in certain areas that are like 99% white is like a kind of unique experience thing too. It's a like, it's not like, it doesn't make the racism go away, but it's like being like you're the only one in like not even have a small pocket of people is like, I think that's even a unique experience that, like, at least for me, you know, I don't know, it's just weird, but I feel like that's something that probably also needs to be acknowledged too, is that, like, for some people, if you have a smaller if you can find a smaller community, it can be helpful, but it's a unique thing where you, like, if you're like the only black person in like a town or something, which I'm not saying that you are, but I just want to say, like, I don't know, it just sounds like it really is difficult, and we need to even more so do more connecting like this, because yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. No, where I grew up, there was one other black person, and that person was also adopted. And we both, like, growing up, it was like extremely confusing for all of us because we were like, you know, just like, because I think a lot of black people obviously had like black parents to like kind of warn them or be like, yeah, this is what's going on and it sucks, but that's kind of like what's happening. But we just didn't have any of that. Like, we were told that like racism ended basically like the civil rights movement, and it was just like really confused. There's like all these things that like I didn't understand as racism. I thought people were just being mean, I thought it was just like bullying, where it's like, well, that was like bullying about my race. It's racism. Like, it's and yeah, I think just like realizing like how messed up things are. And I live in Colorado, and it's like very, very white. And it's like really actually hard to meet like other people of color. And yeah, it's like it's a big issue.
That's I know that sounds maybe weird, but that's usually my first question when I'm looking to move to a neighborhood. Um, that's just my first question because I lived in a neighborhood that was mostly white, and it was really difficult to even just feel comfortable going to the grocery store or to get gas. People will think that you don't belong there, so they'll stare. Um, so yeah, usually I'll look for neighborhoods that are mostly like people of color. Um, is that's what I grew up around as a kid, and I'm just more comfortable in those places.
Yes,
Yeah, definitely.
I was just gonna get in a little fun joke of, yes, I can walk into the Hot Topic and see all the abuelitas taking their little obvious scene
Oh
queer
yeah.
child at the Hot Topic, buying them the little Hello Kitty, goth Hello Kitty purse or something. It's so cute, but it's like nice where I've moved in, and I've been lucky to get a non-white roommate, and we've sort of like be pretty understanding of how like there is a weird treatment for non-white people, and being able to just walk in a grocery store and fit in and be not the only Mexican in there. Now I feel weird because I'm
Yeah.
kind of like one of the few Mexican goths, but like I own it. You know, it's a power move.
Hmm.
I'm just thinking about not a funny story, but a story I think I share a lot because growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, I never really, like, I understood at some level the I'm not allowed to be outside, or there's something different about me being outside and presentable. But because of just my background, I didn't really have any framework of understanding any racism that got thrown at me. And in fact, Luo, what you said about the bullying thing, I realized that a lot of times I was bullied. I was bullied for very Mexican character traits, like my hair or my nose being too big. Like, those were all of the things. My last name, Menjugas, was something I was made fun of for constantly. And just because I grew up near a bunch of white people, I didn't know that was racist. I thought they were just jerks or that I wasn't good enough. And I feel like if you are a person of color who hasn't grown up with parents who took an active role in teaching you how to deal with racism and how to like see it, it leads to, I mean, having a lot of mental problems, thinking you're just not doing well enough at fitting in this world when really it's, you know, it is very shitty behavior, and it is a systematic problem that you're not going to solve by telling your bullies to F off. But getting to like being in places, I think one of the funny things that I experienced growing up is I had a lot of friends in high school that were kind of like troublemakers. A lot of my friends were goth and also punks, and they were very into like, oh man, F the establishment, let's break all the laws, let's shoplift from convenience stores. I never did all that because I was always terrified in a way that obviously my white peers wouldn't. Um, I really got it drilled into my head that if you are a person of color, the law treats you very differently. When I was taking a walk around my own neighborhood and exploring a bit out, and there was like a gated area, and I've seen my white friends, white kids, hop these fences all the time, just for whatever reason, to visit friends, to, I don't know, mess around. I have no idea, but I just wanted to stroll through this area, and it looks like a bunch of people had climbed this fence before. There was like signs ripped off and all that stuff. And I was a very small, kind person. I waved to people who were in that area, and I got the cops called on me. And I wasn't here to do anything threatening. I was literally just a kid on a stroll. And this like really old white guy in a golf cart like literally berated me for like almost 30 minutes straight. I was crying this entire time as I waited for this cop to show up, and he kept threatening, this is going to go on your permanent record. And I thought, oh god, my life's over. I somehow stepped out of line even though all of my friends would have done stuff like that. um, and that's the reason, like, this is all of my interaction with the police from a very early age. I think I've had 3 interactions with cops in my entire life, and all of them were negative, or just being told off, or your problems being completely ignored. And yeah, I don't know. I just I feel what you were saying about not being able to feel welcome in your own community really hits. Uh, yeah.
I think to go off that, like, that's why I've been very selective about my alternative spaces. Like you said in this, I sometimes like have to check to see if like these spaces are very openly anti-racist, because damn, there are too many alternative spaces where white people feel very comfortable co-opting black hair styles. And then you
Mhm.
get the whole goth wearing dreads, and it's horrifying. It is such a weird alien feeling of like, I don't feel welcome here if y'all like to treat people of color as aesthetic, or we like the aesthetics, but we don't actually want the people the moment they have to bring up their actual issues and their struggles. We want to be sad, but we don't want that kind of like sadness.
My self expression is more important than your sense of identity.
Yeah. Yeah, no. It is a matter of like being a person of color and having to be very curative about your spaces that you interact with, because it could be do or die situation.
Yeah, I also think for me, like when white people wear dreads, I'm like, there's no way that you don't know by now. There's no way that like you haven't heard of black people talk about how frustrating it is that white people when they wear dreads is like different than when black people wear dreads, because like black people, you know, just get fun for wearing those kinds of hairstyles, but it's like stylish when white people
Called
do.
on them. The
And so like it's
constant called
really,
on them.
yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's just frustrating. I feel like there's just no way they haven't heard, and they could have just done a different hairstyle, and then they just felt like doing it anyways. To me, it's like that level of entitlement of just like, how this, I don't think it makes like every black person angry, but it definitely makes a lot of black people feel uncomfortable. And people felt people like are making a choice to be like, I don't care. And that's what really bothers me.
I think when they get caught appropriating other cultures, they try to make it seem like we're being sensitive and it wasn't a big deal, or it was a mistake, or they didn't know. But then they don't correct their behavior. And even if I am being sensitive, it doesn't matter. You're violating my boundaries. And I don't like that. So you should stop. For just the plain fact that I don't like it. But they don't see it that way. And I've noticed this in more recent years when the community tries to share like Mexican heritage and invite the community, right? They'll make a big festival and anybody can come to the festival and appreciate the culture, but they'll show up wearing very culturally specific shirts or styles, right? And it's not appropriate, and people talk to them, but I don't know. I don't know how to stop it. We can't really stop them, but maybe just keep educating so people won't do that.
Always gonna say, as just a way to sum it up, I think it is frustrating that a lot of white culture has put minority aesthetics into specific boxes. Like, to be Mexican, you have to be and look like this, and you have to do these things. If to be truly Black, you have to be this way, like everything we are just talking about. And at the same time, they'll also take that box that they have created and just wear it anyways. It's like they give us one identity we can truly be, and we can't even have that to ourselves. And that's just endlessly frustrating.
Yeah, frustrating because we live in a late stage capitalism society. Everything must be consumable, and that includes ethnicities and cultures. So
Mm.
it because I think going off to Ryendys to your kind of whole festival stuff, like there was a Dia de los Muertos kind of procession that we have in one of my old like towns I grew up in. And those were meant for like they're open for the public, but it was kind of this festival, but it's also meant for mourning. And of course people would walk down the street carrying wagons with shrines, and because it's a town that's sort of close on the border, there is a lot of mourning for immigrants who didn't make the trip safely. There are people who go missing. You know, that's a whole discussion. But like just and the amount of uncomfortableness I've seen the amount of non-Mexican and like white people get very uncomfortable when that gets brought up, and a lot of mourning that includes a lot of like the loss of identity, and how like these systems have even oppressed the way that we haven't been able to mourn properly, or we can't mourn this way. But you totally want our Dia de los Muertos aesthetics for your like goth look, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like some people find it is a very kind of like it can be tied to a cultural thing of like mourning in a way that isn't entirely like, you know, that is also being able to move on or process and cope. So I definitely see that like it kind of becomes a matter of like, ah, yes, it really is an aesthetics, um kind of, I guess, politicizing the aesthetics to an extent, I'd say. And it's just hard. It's hard to And I think it's just like how mainstream media depicts a lot of these cultures, especially makes it so that it is a consumable product. So I think like that is the conundrum we have to deal with. That makes it very complicated.
Yeah, just on the obviously like that's like I don't want to say that's like that is all of Hawaii. There's actually an entire essay, Haunani K. Trask, cultural tourism in Hawaii and cultural prostitution. The entire existence of our people is basically, and that essay was written about 20 years ago. And there's a book from a native daughter specifically about that, capitalism, imperialism, the history of Hawaii, etc. And yeah, the whole thing is just all of it is a product. Every hula dancer on every Jeep Grand Cherokee that all 330 million Americans, at least at one time, had and salivated about returning to their idyllic paradise. That Hawaii is a product in the mind. Like I know I've talked to Lou about this previously several times, but it's like Hawaii is a living Westworld with actual robots, but instead of robots, there's an actual living culture that is simulating a fictional idea of what Hawaiian culture is. and the people are made to do these fake plastic hula and dances for starvation wages. Is literally the most unequal place. Speaking of capitalism, Hawaii is 195 on an inequality index, the baseline being 100. The worst is New York is like 140. San Francisco, Mark Zuckerberg, San Francisco is 145. DC is 150. Hawaii is 195. It is by far the most unequal place. People don't know that though. They just show up and eat Hawaiian culture. They have their lau lau and their pork and the $2,000. They get a Jason Momoa analog to train them how to surf, have somebody shake their hips at you, and then they get on a plane. They go back home, and it's all hyper commodification and commodification. But we're not alone. This is like any non-white culture is gonna have some amount of that in some way, shape, or form. And so like I think that, and I want to say something about like specifically about the because I'm like always making these videos. Every week I'm making like 20 hours worth of something, content and videos about these topics. But I think like how do you interact, right? How do, like, for people who are listening, like, well, I'm a white person and I hear what you're saying, but what do I do? You know, like, what do we do? And I think of I was recently thinking of it's because there's 2 game developers, well 3, me plus 2, and there's this game called Prey that I was thinking about and watching, and the main character, Prey from 2006. The main character is a indigenous Cherokee person, and there are a lot of other games and movies and shows and things like what you're just speaking about with the festivals that are just being co-opted and used and then disregarding the people. I think like one thing about this game that I like when I played it, and I listening to other indigenous people, because I'm not Cherokee myself, I'm not like practicing culturally with them, but I know many of them, and you know, the difference is like, is the people's the character is somebody who is not just like in a headdress performing Pocahontas for white people to consume today, you know, is not performing the white circus version of indigenous peoples. There's input. Now, some of the creators were not necessarily indigenous, but the input from the main actors, was like authentic input, and you could have authentic input. There's a lot of things that people do nowadays. Well, we'll consult with a Hawaiian, or we'll consult with a black person. We'll consult with an indigenous person whose culture we're going to put into Horizon Forbidden West as a bad example, and then not listen. We're just going to tack it on to, you know, kind of like Ryendys, what you're saying. We're like, oh, well, we listened to some input, but you're still being sensitive, so we're going to publish it anyway. We don't care, right? But then, but this other game was like, well, like, let's actually like rework the entire story, because the white people had written their own story. Oh, and a Cherokee person, and he's in a headdress, and they're like, well, we Cherokee people, we're not just running around all day long in feather headdresses. So maybe put the guy in like jeans and like a jacket, and maybe he has a Cherokee little bit language, but he's not like, you know. And also, lots of us Cherokee, we're all in the U.S. military because there's impoverishment, and our only way out is to join the military a lot of the time. That's definitely for my family. That's the case, like I was bringing up. And so like the main character is like disidentifying with his own culture. I mean, the game is showing he's like, Grandpa, I don't care about Cherokee. That's a bunch of spiritual mumbo jumbo. I got to get out of this reservation and go to California and make a lot of money in Los Angeles and be cool, you know, in the very beginning. But then like over the course of the game, and my point is that like it incorporates authentic indigenous experiences, characters, right, that are still indigenous. Also, anyway, yeah, I'll stop there. Go.
Oh, I was gonna say, because I think I've seen breakthroughs of at least the new remake, but like from what I understand, the premise also is about like these sentient alien-esque creatures that start mimicking like sentient life form and objects, and there is sort of, you can probably tie that there is a certain theme about imposter syndrome, especially with indigeneity, I believe. Like there is a very coherent tie to like identity in Prey, I believe, from what I've seen of walkthroughs, but like I can see that like it is tied to a very kind of imposter in performance, you know, to your sense of self. Yeah, but I
know what
anyways, you're talking about. I've seen Prey. Yep.
I know this is not a game dev thing, but I'm a lot of things. I'm an indigenous person of color, and I try to put these panels on, but also I do game dev like all day long. I'm trying to make Go ahead.
I was gonna say, Prey is cyberpunk-esque, because the first one was, right? It just had that very gritty cybernetics kind of look to it.
it's Prey is like, it has like
Like-
Independence Day crossed with Doom, but like with an indigenous main character. It's kind of Half-Life 2. It's like it's a lot going on. It's alien abduction. Everyone on Earth is getting it has a kind of War of the Worlds ish, like aliens come down, suck out basically massive amounts of people from the Earth, and you're stuck on this spaceship trying to fight your way out. But it is kind of like and then the main character is a Cherokee person on the reservation, and his grandfather's like, you will need my help tonight, young one. You will need my help. And he's like, I don't care about your Cherokee. I don't care about, what is this? This is stupid, Grandpa. We're all Americans now. And like, I like that about it, because like, that's like, holy shit, this is like actually my experience. Like I was saying, right? It's like, or like somebody in my family going, I don't care about that culture because how am I going to get ahead? Right? Like we've been saying, if I don't put down white, how am I going to get a good job in capitalist America? Right? If I don't, and it's like the character felt very authentic. And anyway, so it's like, and it has like science fiction in space, and it's very gothic. It's very dark. It's like horror. There's like creepy creatures that are like integrating all of the human matter. It's like System Shocky, cosmic. Well, I guess you are cosmic horror. So it would be right up your alley. But but Prey anyway. So Prey is anyway. So it's not really a game dev thing, but it is a. My point is that kind of like it integrates. And this is something that I think about for my own creations as well. It's like, how do I represent my own culture? I'm always thinking about this. How do I represent Native Hawaiian culture as somebody who didn't speak Hawaiian language growing up, and I feel imposter syndrome. Like I'm gonna misrepresent my own culture if I put this in my game. I'm gonna like not be Hawaiian enough in it, and that's like a fear that I always feel. And people say, Silver Spook, don't worry, whoever you are, that's Hawaiian. And I know, like, and we have to kind of like accept like whoever we are, as much as the language and the culture has been ripped and stripped, commodified, distorted, twisted, and then sold back to us for like $9.99 and slapped on the plastic lunchbox, and and we're eating our own fake. But we have to like, I don't know. It's this thing. I'm always playing games in my head of like, am I doing this right, or am I gonna disgrace everyone? But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, I am a person from Hawaii they have attempted to destroy me, but if I don't make anything, if I don't try to represent this, then they have succeeded at the genocide. They have succeeded, and I am another. Anyway. So I'm just talking in my head right now, but it's kind of like that stuff that is always on my mind. So that's why I brought that game up.
Imposter syndrome, more like Imgothster syndrome. There.
I was just gonna say, I really appreciate you talking about the imposter syndrome thing. So just because, even from my lens, until very recently, I've been very uncomfortable talking about my Mexican heritage or really exploring that side of me, because it has effectively been just dissected and like removed from me so effectively that like I feel weird trying to speak in a Mexican accent, despite the fact that like all of my family speaks Spanish, because I feel like somehow I've been so far removed from that culture. I'm somehow not going to live up to the identity that I'm a part of. And I even like feel struggles talking about, hey, these are issues within Mexican American cultures. Like I feel like I'm appropriating my own culture sometimes in a way when I do things like that. And I definitely think like that's sort of like what the final result of assimilation is. It is this erasing of anything that doesn't fall within dominant white culture, where you either adapt poorly to a cultural background you were never a part of, and peers are going to be way more adapted to that cultural sphere, or you can engage in this other culture and feel alienated in it, despite the fact that like you said, you can't change your genes. I am Mexican American, and nothing about how I look or how I speak is ever going to change that. And it just sucks that I feel a lot of us get left in this space of imposter syndrome, and I'm still untangling this after years of living like this. And yeah, it just sucks.
I feel that.
Yeah, I'm half Chinese, and no one knows that. And when I tell Chinese people I'm half Chinese, they always say, really? And I'm like, yeah. And it's just like, yeah. But the funny thing is, I think with Black people, like a lot of Black people will ask me like right away, they'll be like, "What are you mixed with?" And for some reason, a lot of Black people can tell that I'm mixed, and I'll be like, "I'm half Chinese," and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." It's like it's kind of funny because like when I tell Chinese people, they're like, "Really?" and they're really surprised. But when I tell Black people, they're like, "Oh, that makes sense." And so
Yeah.
that's always been interesting. But
Agreed.
yeah, it's weird because it's like I'm literally like it's in my DNA, and yet like I don't really belong there, if that makes sense. Like I think a lot of Chinese people, it's like even though I'm literally half Chinese, I think a lot of Chinese people like don't understand me as that because at the end of the day I'm Black, or like that's how people see me.
Yeah.
I mean, as a resident Asian, I apologize for any thing that you have felt. I mean, I'm actually I'm Asian and Pacific. I'm a lot of things, but like I think that like yeah, that's a really rough thing. I remember thinking like I'm gonna bring this Chinese tiger out just for Lua because I think I remember, or maybe it was after that. I was like, oh, good thing I brought the tiger out. It was for Chinese New Year because
Yeah,
here,
I
like,
remember that.
Lao Hu is the Chinese word for tiger, and also Vietnamese as well. But anyways, but it's like, you know, and the thing is like in Hawaii, it's very, it was historically very mixed culturally, and like I'm from the Chinatown area also, so that's like a whole. So being Hawaiian and being Asian, the United States is not very happy with the Chinese. I don't know if you know this. They're not very happy with Asians generally, and they're kind of like, you know, and so, but historically that's always been the case. And so, in Hawaii specific, I can't speak for everywhere, but like Hawaii specifically, like Asians and Pacific Islanders cooperated together a lot early on in the 1800s. I talk about that a lot in my specifically like Hawaii history panels and threads and stuff. But like, you know, they're Asian and Hawaiian cooperative. So, and like my family is like Asian and Pacific Islander, like I kind of said. So like, I don't know, people being like part Black and part Asian, people being like part Hawaiian and part Asian, people being part, like here anyway. I can't say that in like Colorado, obviously. I don't know, but it's like, oh yeah, you're like Hawaiian, Japanese. Everybody kind of asks like, well, you're Hawaiian what? You're Hawaiian Chinese, Filipino, Hawaiian Filipino Chinese, something, and like you're still kind of counted to white people. It's just like, well, you're those people we're trying to get rid of. But inside, like for Hawaiian people, it's like, oh, of course you're Hawaiian, Filipino, Chinese, Portuguese, something. And Hawaiian Black, this and these things, because you know Hawaii, the indigenous Hawaiian culture didn't see race in the way that the West, with this like hierarchy of races that's based on the top of the pyramid being, of course, the Caucasian, the Anglo-Teutonic, and then you have the Blackness being at the bottom. You have the Asian, you know, all this gross racist stuff that goes way back to the Yellow Peril and the whole colonial era, right? And so Hawaiians didn't see that, so we early on incorporated, but as white and oligarchic capitalist plantations showed up, they kind of insinuated, because there was a lack of racism between Hawaiians, Filipinos, Chinese, and even Japanese and Vietnamese, they were working together in worker-owned cooperatives in non-capitalist, rice and kalo or restaurants and all the, you know, these businesses. And the white capitalist oligarchs like Dole and, you know, Mr. Dole Pineapples and Mr. Sanford Sugar and all these people, they said, these people aren't divided enough in the working class. Let's tell all the Japanese the Chinese are out to get you. Let's tell the Hawaiians, oh, those Chinese are very stingy. Let's tell all the Filipinos, oh, those Hawaiians you don't want to trust. So they actually insinuated all this garbage. And so anyway, this is a long extra story, but like I think like I can't say like what it's like anywhere, but I just want to say like, you know, I think that like there is a more I don't know. It's messed up any way that you cut it. It's unfortunate that I don't know, like somebody couldn't connect you more to some of your cultural roots, but I mean, the United States is not particularly interested in making sure that people that are Asian, African, or anything else Africans reconnecting to their African history, right? I mean, they spend a lot of time making it seem like Greece and Rome begot everything, when actually Africa and Asia did a whole lot. And that's why I'm reading like Black Athena, based on Big Teals in the chat, is recommending. It's like, actually, there's lots of great successes all around the world that aren't due to just Greeks and Romans who weren't even as white as, you know, all of the Gerard Butlers want to make the 300 look, you know? It's like, actually, there's a lot of Black and anyways, yeah. So yeah.
Gonna say onto that yes, Mexican Americans also have that problem of a lot of Black Mexicans are often very well erased in a lot of Mexican American like stories and even like histories, and because of Oh, the anti-blackness, of course. That has been internalized. And it's just like on top of the anti-blackness and the goth culture, I have the whole imposter syndrome, the imposter syndrome, and I think like there's also a very complicated layer of like assimilation where if you're just part black, you're harder to assimilate unless like you're lighter skin, and there is a whole other level of just like self-loathing that I think adds to that dynamic of assimilation where like blackness is the lowest tier of like assimilation, you know? Um, and I think it's just it's sad. It's sad. It's like the imposter syndrome has layers upon layers, and you're just like, when will it end? When will it end?
It went with the end of capitalism, colonialism, you know. And
Yes.
and land back, of course. You know.
But gothness, God, I was gonna have a question about like, is I think on top of it is goth culture. Do we feel like it's becoming? I think I was gonna have a concern of like, goth culture getting very mainstream, and if that mainstreamness implies from this discussion that like it's going to get assimilated and get very co-opty soon. I mean, I think the argument is already is, but how do we feel about that?
I would personally say it already is, given that just the goth subculture has been around for a long time and has kind of faded into just the background of normative practices at this point. I know, like, even even like when I was exiting school, goth as a subculture was kind of already being normalized. It stopped being this weird thing to see kids dressed in all black with band t-shirts. Um, Obviously, I don't know how the youth culture is right now, but like I feel like especially online, the goth subculture is way more acceptable and less of an outcast type than it certainly used to be. But I also think a lot of my frustrations personally with the direction that goth aesthetics have been moving is that as it has fallen into the mainstream, goth aesthetics have gotten more and more typecasted into this very white image of like and not to get too much into like weird internet culture, but this is why I hate like the big titty goth GF stereotype, because it's always like a really skinny white goth lady with like big tits who's into all of the interests that her gamer boyfriend is into. And I hate that this is such what popular culture does to like subtype and subgroups is it'll take it and then dilute it into this super marketable package. And then that just becomes the association you're left with. So I could have been a goth all my life, and now I feel like because I refuse to wear more skimpy clothing, or because I don't know, I just don't do a lot of things that fit this new image, and I can even feel imposter syndrome in that. Yay.
I noticed a few years ago there was a shift, and it was new to me because I've been, in like the alternative scene for a lot of my life. But the younger generations wanting to choose like a sub aesthetic, like pastel goth and um new goth, and I don't know, like those were the two main ones that I noticed. But me being a little older, I was like, oh, is this what the kids are doing today? But now that you explain it that way, it's like, oh, they were trying to make like a sub aesthetic just to fit them, which it was just playing on what were already mainstream, like mainstream acceptable styles, I guess.
Yeah, and I definitely think, especially with the pastel goth, I'm sure Jupiter will tune in on this, but pastel goth is like a like when I know when my parents, who are also goths, were growing up and in their mid-20s, like pastel goth was an existent subtype of the goth aesthetic. but it was relatively niche, and
Mm.
but it has grown in prominence over time, almost to surpass in cultural acceptability actual mainline goth aesthetics. And
I
this is something that I also find very frustrating. That I'll just say I never liked pastel goth, and it's because
Mm.
one of the reasons I like goth aesthetics is because I've never been happy with my body, and wearing all black kind of helps less accentuate features that I'm just very insecure about. That's like a big part. Pastel goth is kind of eschewing more of that pure monochromatic black color scheme for more obviously pastel colors. And what's frustrating is I just feel like this becoming the dominant form of goth aesthetics has really, I don't know, it feels weird. It has made it so this aesthetic that I'm wearing right now is no longer what looks goth to, I guess, a lot of people growing up now, I would say.
was gonna say pastel goth is very interesting in that I would argue it probably started like the gamer girl aesthetic. It probably has roots and influence in the gamer girl aesthetic of that we have today in terms of like I think the stereotypical streamer girl look.
Mm.
And it's very interesting because it's like whenever because I got into pastel goth for like a split moment, I was like, ooh, pretty colors and like very cute like aestheticizing of anime and specifically sojo anime and like gamer kind of vintage console gamer aesthetics. And I think like it kind of got into this weird niche where it started crossing with like nerd culture and goth culture, and it starts kind of it kind of slowly got engulfed into the gamer girl aesthetic. And I find that very interesting because it's like every time I kind of look up pastel goth now, it kind of gets into some gamer girl stuff by accident through like recommendations if you get through like Etsy or whatnot. It's very
Mm.
fascinating about what it's become. And pastel goth, like I think it's very cute. I think it's a nice change of like kind of embracing very nerdy culture. But I do agree, pastel goth I think kind of hits into the same aesthetic problems that the white skinny goth girl culture came sorry, the white skinny goth girl archetype, and I think that also gets into the face of pastel goth especially, but now with like very brightly multicolored dyed hair is kind of like the difference for that kind of face, and it kind of, it looks like the Twitch streamer girl
Uh,
look.
Okay.
uh, uh,
I was.
uh,
Oh,
Oh
go
yeah.
no. Go ahead.
just very quickly, I also want to say, like, on top of that, pastel goth has probably just risen in prominence because, in part, pastel goths as like the aesthetic is a lot less, I feel, threatening to a lot of men than like other types of goth aesthetics, where I know like a lot of goth fashion has like a lot of spiked chokers, and like especially female goth clothes can lean more into punk and almost butch aesthetics. And I think to a predominantly masculine view, that's more threatening and less attractive than the softer, cutesier pastel goth aesthetic. And I kind of find frustration in that. I think that is why that has risen so heavily in prominence, is because, yeah, it aligns really well with the male gaze. So there's that on top of it too.
I was now the clarification it helps because um I was thinking that pastel goth was what people shifted into after being seen, like like the scene queens.
There's definitely a lot of DNA that crossed by there, but I
Mm,
will say pastel goth is older than scene. They
okay.
definitely don't cross-reference each other a whole lot.
Okay. Because I saw a lot of people who adopted the scene style. They were kind of mimicking 80s glam sometimes. So that's why I know these all blend and they overlap and timelines are weird because this isn't like
I think it's
this is
also
their culture, like communities sharing, right? Um yeah, okay. So I see the gamer girl aesthetic. Nah, okay, it makes sense now. Because I didn't know where that came from either.
You know, it's like would you see the gamer girl, the Western gamer girl? So you're like,
Mhm.
what is this? What did we come from this? And then it's like, oh, it's a slowly transmutation of all these different alternative fashion cultures coming together.
Mhm.
It's kind of beautiful in a horrifying way.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think I was like gonna add a commentary to what you said, and this, which was I think also on top, like, and this isn't also tackling the complex history of city fashion or city
Street
fashion,
fashion?
street
Yeah.
fashion. Sorry, I was
Mhm.
thinking of, I was making city pop for street fashion. The like street fashion becoming very mainstream now, and a lot of street fashion also has its roots in alternative fashion, as well as a lot of non-white a lot of non-white and black fashion designers historically contributing to that scene, and it just starts getting co-opted by like mainstream media and starts becoming more wider, and it's like, oh no. But yeah, it's the direction.
Mhm.
For sure.
I know we were talking about the craft, right? At one point.
It was brought up.
I
Yeah.
watched it recently. Yeah.
Good
I'm
film.
definitely I'm definitely not Googling it right now because I'm out of the loop.
Oh. Um. Oh, I watched it a long time ago, and then watched it recently, and then today again. Um. But I think that they explore a lot of interesting themes about racism and misogyny. Um. Very interesting that I didn't catch this as a 5-year-old, but uh like seeing it at the time, I was like, "Oh, I identify with these girls because they were in high school, right? And I was a little, I was a child that was very much like into alternative things, right? So when I saw them and I thought, "Oh, I identify with them in different ways." Like the racism that one character faced, and then just being different, like one of the other main characters, I forget the name, Nancy, I think her name was. Um, and like identifying with that and wanting to be like them, even though I know in the movie the three girls end up not being so great, and they kind of bully the real witch, right? She was considered the real witch, but she had natural powers, natural abilities.
She was, I think I remember, she was also blonde, right? The blonde
Mm-hmm.
too, so it's like,
Yeah, that's interesting. That she was the more authentic witch, but she looked the most normy.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like, I feel like that was one of the weird, okay, so I think like that was like part of a weird trend with the 90s of like, and I think even 2000s, I think even to this day, we're like, we want this consumable, the easily consumable, like, alternative girl can also be weird, but also she has to learn to turn off her, like, weirdness and alternativeness and start to conform to being very, like, appealing for, like, society. And I heard, like, that has been a thing when some people who are like, I want a goth girlfriend, but I want you to take off your makeup and your clothes the moment you meet my parents, is like an ongoing joke. Oh, sirens. But uh like I know like there is a sort of it's a weird message of like, yes, we like weird mainstream media's kind of consume of strange girls. Uh but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love the craft for like what it is in a space of like these girls trying to find expression and rage, especially in such a suburban esque like uh neighborhood. And I think like there was also commentary about classism because like one of the girls comes from a poor like working class family, and like that magic is a way for her to channel a lot of her rage, and I think implied abuse from her family. It
Yeah,
was,
Nancy was abused by her stepfather,
mhm.
and Rochelle was being bullied, but it was really racism from the other character. I don't remember her name. She was on the swim team, I think, or they were on the swim team together. And then Sarah was the main character who was she came from a family, I guess, of witches. And there was another character that had scarring on her back. So that's what made her feel like an outcast, or why they would sort of like other her at the school, because they went to a private school. Very yuppie.
Private Catholic school, just like me, but I was not in that club. Although I knew someone that was just like the racially outed, the racially outsider, the black goth girl, which there was a girl that I was thinking back to it now, because we were talking about like, oh, like goths
Rochelle?
are always white, and yeah, Rochelle, like goths are white, and it's a white. When I looked up the hashtag World Goth Day on World Goth Day, that was this week. Perfect timing for this panel, but I was like, what are it was interesting. The first like hour, everything was white goths, and then later on, somebody was like, oh shit, it's gonna make Jack Dorsey or Elon, I guess he doesn't own Twitter anymore, it's gonna make Twitter look racist. We better put black people in there. But everything was white. On when you search World Goth Day, it was all white, bleach white, blonde goths, or white and some blonde and all white goths. And then later on, came back and it was like, oh, somebody figured out, oh no, we're gonna look bad. Fix the algorithm, quick! C# coders that are also like probably goth, trans people of color, fix that algorithm so we don't look racist. Anyways, but before I went off topic myself, there was a person that was just like that character, Rochelle, in my school, and she was like the most goth person in the school. Everyone's scared of her. She you know what? She was black and Korean. She was black and Asian. She was half black and half Korean. Her dad was stationed in Korea, as the U.S. military is wont to do, and then is the child, and she like had a very like problematic home life, and was like just like very upset. But and you know, she had, and you could like, I could tell she was like, you know, she was black and Asian of some kind, but she was the most god. Like she had the corn. She would like hiss at people and shit, and like you know, we were like kind of friends because we were like two of. Well, you know, like we were like all around the same kind of circles all the time. I was nobody's friend. I was just like super weird. I was like the mysterious like eldritch crypt keeper, like playing like a BC rich warlock speed metal guitar, looking kind of like this, but not as cool. We were at a private Catholic school, so we had to wear like private Catholic dorky uniforms. So, but then outside of that, I would put on black nail polish and play speed metal. But what I wanted to say also is that like that the goths, you know, I didn't really watch the crap, but I felt the energy of the crap was always around, like, and the impact of that movie and other movies like it culturally in that time, and it was definitely there. And I just watched Stranger Things Part 1, which is there's a lot of horror and 80s and 90s nostalgia to that thing, and I was just thinking of like, there's a D&D group, that's kind of what I'm doing here, and they're playing D&D, and they go on this thing about how D&D, and they all look like this. They're like metal, long hair. The satanic panic is happening, and they're all like, you know, the problem isn't Satan worshippers coming through your Ozzy Osbourne lyrics and your Dungeons and Dragons. You know, your the elves and the you know the dwarves that are hitting each other for hit points in these little rooms in your house playing D&D, listening to metal. They're not coming for your children. It's the conformity of everyone else, you know, and that's a line in Stranger Things. Like, I hate a lot of things about that entire thing, but I was like, it is kind of like that though. And like a lot of things we're talking about were kind of like happening in that. And there's also a character like the Nancy character who is suffering from. He's the poor kid. His parents are not even there. He has an uncle who is possibly an alcoholic, works at the plant, kind of like Harry Dean Stanton in one of those 80s movies. The poor from the bad side of the train tracks, working class, possibly, you know, Eastern European. And he's got he lives in a trailer, whereas the cheerleading squad head lives in a giant 3-bedroom massive house, and her boyfriend is like the varsity, Mr. Blonde Hair, Blue Eye, varsity jacket man leading the sports team to, you know, anyways. So it's kind of like, where am I even going with that? But, speaking of movies, I know Lua's doing an entire
Here's
Batman
one
movie.
for the weird kids.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out where I'm going to take that, but I know like the representations of goth in movies was another thing I was thinking about, alt and goth culture in film, because that also like is a feedback loop with the actual culture and music and fashion, and I know Lua's doing a video about the Batman, so that's a
Oh,
that's a
I'm
I'm
excited for
excited
that.
for that.
Yeah, have you all seen the new Batman movie?
The extended
Mm-hmm.
My Chemical Romance music video. That's a film. That's what
Yeah.
everyone's been calling it. I also just want to give a shout out to Bring Back the Craft. I know that Rachel True, the actress of Rochelle, is an actual witch. And Fairuza Balk, the actress for Nancy, also for a brief moment owned the occult store that was in the craft, because that was actually based on an actual occult store, and she owned it for a brief moment.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
it's just want to say some of the actresses in the craft were actual witches and occult girls, so it's sweet. But yes, the Batman.
The Batman. Yeah.
Ju-
How did you
you are
feel
pretty
like it?
bad.
Because I feel like people have very mixed reviews of it, so I'm kind of curious to hear what you all think of it.
I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it. That was fun. Like Robert Pattinson, he's a good actor.
I think it had a good message of, hey, yeah, you can be sad and down, but you need to get out of your edgelord phase, is a kind of the message I took out of it. And I think taking that kind of aesthetic and understanding to kind of direct that anger to something that's not productive, but something that doesn't punch down on others, I think was what I took from that, and a lot of people I've heard talking about that film.
Definitely want to watch it now that I've heard a lot more about what it's about. I'll be honest though, I don't watch many films unless they are really bad or horror.
As the person who specializes in film, look at you.
Yeah, I know. I'm using that film degree to for so much analysis of the same slasher film over and over again.
Oh, you have a film degree. Well, film school. I'm a film school dropout, so I think
Oh,
that's.
don't worry. I'm swimming in film jobs now that I have a film degree. Just totally rolling in film work. No, I graduated in 2020. I literally got my degree mailed to me, and there was no ceremony or anything. And that was a pretty good way to sum up how getting a film degree felt.
Mm.
Yeah, I will say about the Batman. I like a lot of I've seen a lot of Batman movies in my time, so I have high standards. But I not specifically the Batman. I talk about other things related to movies a lot in my things that I do in my commentary. But I would say like it was like interesting that it was a detective Batman. That was another thing I was like, oh, he's this is like he's like Humphrey Bogart Batman, but like emo Humphrey Bogart, with like and then yeah, he's definitely like feeling his feelings very hard in a lot of the movie, where other Batmans and Michael Keaton is just kind of like play a Batman, rich billionaire, and then he talks very gruffly, and I thought that was there's some new things to it. I would say like as a I remember like thinking about it kind of like just Batman generally as a character. It's kind of the goth Iron Man, and I have issues with that guy, obviously. But for billionaire philanthropist arms due to Playboy reasons, but like as a inside of the world of the Batman, I thought he did a good job. I'm happy that Team Batman has replaced Team Edward, and I actually made a video where I dressed up like Twilight at one point somewhere on my YouTube channel. I'm not gonna tell anyone anything else. You're gonna have to go hunt through 20,000 hours to find it.
Say it was a phase.
It's a Twilight
for a
fan
moment.
makes out with Edward Cullen in the middle of a CNN broadcast was the name of the video, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, I'll stop there. I'm gonna embarrass myself if I go further than that.
Everybody dig it up. We have to find the video.
No.
We need that ransom so we can make Silver Spook put us in more panels.
Yeah. What is it, the paddle or your social media identity gets it? Like,
argument or topic for Batman then. Do you think Batman's gonna awaken more people to be goth now that they do you think that is a very that could be on the like Craft is I think a definitive like film for a lot of kids to be like, oh my god, being a goth's kind of cool, or like appealing to mainstream kind of kids and younger generations. Do you think the Batman's gonna have a place for that too? Is actually my curiosity. I know we just turned into a film discussion now, but I'm actually curious because I'm seeing a lot of people draw fan art of the Batman and quote it. So
I will just say, from a perspective of I've not seen this film, but I have seen a lot of Batman media, and I've learned a lot about goth history over, um, I guess, just generally. And I think personally, I don't think goth or emo or whatever this trend is of dark aligned, slightly edgy aesthetics is going to go away just because I think, I mean, goth aesthetics have been around for a very long time at this point. We're edging on this is a, at this point, 50-year-old fashion trend. And it's always constantly evolving and shifting into new forms. And a form that was really popular in like the late 80s can suddenly rise into prominence in 2022. Yeah, so I just think that there's always a market, or not a market. I mean, media is always going to focus on there being a market, but I feel like as long as there are people that are growing up feeling like outcasts, feeling like they've done everything wrong, and that they're just angry and need some way to vent that, I feel like goth aesthetics are always going to be popular to those people. Um, and yeah, I just don't see that changing anytime soon. If anything, I'm just excited to see how the goth aesthetic morphs in coming decades.
Mm-hmm.
since we're just talking about the future of goth, I just want to throw in a very fun question for everyone. What was your go-to kind of goth media that you were consuming? Did y'all like on top of Dress Goth have like some goth playlists or like movies that you wanted to emulate the aesthetics of that were very alternative or gothic that spoke to you when you're younger? I'm very interested to see the different generations here.
I
For everyone
I
here.
I specifically latched onto my aesthetics are very inspired by Birthday Massacre, which is a Canadian-based rock group. They're still making music, as it turns out, but I listened to a lot of them as a kid, and also I was a really big slasher film junkie in my teenage years, so I'll always like wear Scream shirts and stuff like that. Those are kind of my aesthetic inspirations in terms of like media consumption. And I guess a lot of like gothic Lolita aesthetics and anime have also been very, very influential to my current aesthetics. Anybody else?
Oh, I just want to um well, I got it from my goth girlfriend actually. Now goth wife, I should say. So eat that, all of you chuddy dudes who came here just because there are amazing looking people on this panel. Um, if you want your own goth girlfriend, buy my book, $75 on Amazon. 12 steps to. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Pet.
do 13 rules so you can like outcompete.
You just need to lay out a bunch of horror movies in black lipstick around your house, and goth girls will just slowly flock to you.
Pet all the
Like
black cats,
rats.
and say hi to all the skateboarders, and be nice to them. Just like Jordan Peterson. I'm sorry, Gothy Peterson said. I'm just joking. I'm doing too many jokes at the same time. But anyways, I am not joking that my partner is a goth, not goth girlfriend, is a goth partner in Silver Spook cooperative / Silver Spook businesses and everything. And this is what you do. Okay, don't. I'm speaking specifically to everyone in here is super cool, but anyone else, all the people who are crappy Western leftists that are gonna make some kind of takedown video of this, I'm just speaking to you clowns when you're commenting in the idiots chat. Be nice to people, okay? Be nice to everyone. Let people like use their aesthetic and do whatever they want, and respect people as people and not as like your sexual gratification tools right now. And that will help you in all relationships, not just in the girlfriends that may or may not be goth or gamer or whatever. But anyway, that's just me. That's just I feel like I gotta say that as the one like see him / they them person there. No, I'm sorry, I'm not the only one. I take that back. But as somebody who has been very dude presenting for much of my life, it's just a pro tip. But also, I'm not even joking. My partner is like currently like re-gothifying the house. There's skulls and bats everywhere, but now it's and then there were like right now it's moving towards black and red hair, and there's a lot of black and red. This getup was partially put together thanks to my partner, so I can't take full credit for this. So I'm not joking. But Smashing Pumpkins, I played a lot of their music, and I tried to best dress like Billy Corgan when I was 15, with the top hat and
Shout out to Holly.
top
Having a
hat
cool
and like
aesthetic.
yeah, I don't know what I was doing. I dressed like the interdimensional / Victorian dudes from Dark City who are trying to mind control all of the. Well, I don't give. You should watch Dark City. That's a really dark, gothy movie. I had a black trench coat and I walk around in 102-degree weather with 98% humidity in Hawaii in Chinatown in a trench coat, sweating a lot. And I think I watched a lot of The Matrix. I played a lot of weird old video games and listened to a lot of alternative music. And long explanation, but that's where that comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was really like one of my older siblings was dressed goth, and I really always liked their clothes. And then yeah, anime Lolita fashion I really liked. It's been inspirational. And even though this isn't like quite goth, but like kind of like more like alternative, like listening to bands like Paramore or Panic at the Disco, really influenced me.
I would say my fashion inspiration, I guess, was my mom. Um, so she grew up like around goth, new wave, uh, punk, metal, like everything back in the 80s. That was her thing. And being like Mexican American, yeah, people would make fun of her and say she was a coconut or trying to do white people stuff. But she never cared. So she kept doing it until, I mean, she's still very alternative, just now she's a mom. So, but when I was younger, because she was very young when she had me, she would dress very like goth, punk, generally alternative. She wore a lot of Doc Martens and high stockings. Uh, just so yeah, I copied a lot of her style at first when I first started like listening to her music, wearing her clothes, um, going places with her. She took me to shows when I was little, me and my friends, and it just evolved from there. I just kept getting coloring my hair and getting piercings and tattoos and just yeah, but I would say she was my biggest inspiration.
I have to give a shout out to my mom too. A lot of my early goth music and aesthetic inspiration was from her. In fact, to this day, one of my favorite memories is singing My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade, the entire album all the way through with her, so long that it is still completely memorized to this day. So shout out to the goth moms of the world. Y'all are awesome.
Yeah. My mom, was it? I think it was Depeche Mode.
Yeah.
And in excess, my.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was gonna say rest in peace, lead keyboardist singer of Depeche Mode just passed away.
Oh.
Sorry, I interrupted you with the depressing news.
Oh, no, I'm just saying. Whenever bands have like documentaries come out with interviews and my mom and I like to go to the movies and watch them. Like they'll usually be limited release, and we'll go together.
Oh, I forgot one more influence. Blade. I did an entire thing about Blade. I'm gonna do an entire YouTube video about Blade because Blade, Wesley Snipes, I mean, speaking of the Matrix, which is Matrix, Underworld with Kate Beckinsale, BBC, and the Black. I mean, I know for some people this is like, oh, that's how my parents met, and I'm a 22-year-old. My parents met watching Matrix and Blade and Underworld, and I don't know what the heck you're talking about. But if you do know what I'm talking about, this is old movies. Although the craft is older, what am I talking about? But Blade is the original, to my mind, the original, the belt buckles, black leather trench coat, the aesthetic, the shades that Neo is wearing, that a lot of the other vampire movies are wearing. It was originated, like so many other things, as we were talking, like rock music and a lot of goth aesthetics, like the Ankh from black non-white people. So Blade was like the original like black leather trench coat movie. It was the first Marvel movie, by the way. So there wouldn't be Spider-Man, all the X-Men, all the Avengers. Blade was the first of those, and it was a black dude dressed in all black, fighting nasty, mostly white vampires, sucking the life out of everyone else. Anyways, Holly and I were rewatching Blade. Oh, Blade 2 is like black Asian. Donnie Yen is like the most goth up with his full like leather. He's like in the BDSM club and everything, getting ready to go. Ron Perlman. This is just but anyways, Blade inspired a lot of that other. I would argue Blade inspired a lot of the other aesthetics, especially for like the more the trench coaty rave club thing that really got hot. Even X-Men in 2000 were kind of dressed like in all black dark leather and that kind of stuff, and I feel like that came from that movie too. So I was playing a video game that has like a Blade main character in this mod recently, and I was like, oh yeah, that's where that's all from. Anyways, yeah.
I would also like to shout out in the same Blade-esque aesthetic. I just think of I think you are definitely right. It's one of the biggest inspirations for, I would think, cybergoth, which I just miss seeing around. It was a big thing in 2000s, near the early 2010s.
Until they started pulling out the dreads.
Yeah, no, that was
That
bad.
was,
I just miss the baggy pants and the neon green. And I was gonna say also Deus Ex is a very memorable, very techie goth fashion with JC Denton having that shades and trench coat. That was definitely a very big aesthetic for a long time after Blade came out. So yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Just on that, take Blade. You know, the trench coat, 3 belt buckles, armored chest plating, shades at night, the dark boots. Take him, Neo from The Matrix, Keanu Reeves. Take J.C. Denton from Deus Ex: The Video Game. Take Christian Bale from Equilibrium. They're identical. They're all freaking ripping off the black or OG goth cyberpunk dude. Anyway, yeah.
No, you're definitely right. I think it is criminal that more people haven't seen Blade. It's really good. Recommendation to everybody watching this, please watch Blade and Blade 2.
Blade 2 is also directed by Guillermo del Toro, right? He also directed that one, so
I believe so.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
yeah. So that
I'm horrendous with filmmaker names, ironically.
That's the one I remember because I was like, wait, he made that because it's such a. I can see it if I look very hard, but it's almost easy to miss that. You're oh, this is a Del Toro film.
Yeah, the creature makeup and the a lot of that is very. You can tell it's Del Toro. It has hints of Pan's Labyrinth, the kind of dark fantasy, or the Hellboys. I think he made Hellboy shortly thereafter that.
Yeah.
One of the characters looks like one of the Hellboy characters. But anyways, yeah, it's very dark fantasy aesthetic. Yeah.
Can I ask you about the Batman movie?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't really like it almost at all, and I'm kind of curious to hear what people do like about it, if that makes sense.
To be honest,
if you want to talk about it, we also don't have to.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm interested to hear what you didn't like about. I mean, don't feel like you're gonna make all the Batman fans feel bad, because I forgot I have dunked. Ask Holly, I have dunked hard on some Batmans, and I'm so sorry if you love the Batman. I'm not really Batman. It's what it represents, but I mean, I kind of said, I like the detective stuff. I like it was a little different. I'm kind of tired. There's a lot of Batman movies. There's Batman Begins, Batman Forever, Batman for a short time. I don't know, Batman and Robin, Batman, Robin, and there's so many Batmans, and so like at least this one had it had a few different things. It's not bad. It's not Zack Snyder ruining shit. So like, but yeah, that's yeah.
Like the same, like I like the detective stuff. Like that was a part of Batman that I did see implemented enough in films. It's like, oh, finally you do some detective stuff. But also, it kind of made the movie feel really slow, and I can get why there are other aspects of the story as well that are not appealing. And I know it's a mixed film. Like on one hand, I'm like, I kind of like sad goth boy aesthetic. It is a type of like edgy dude archetype that I kind of miss that I haven't seen since like Tim Burton-esque films. So it's like, oh, this old little treat from the old 2000s is coming back. But it's because like with Riddler is also some chicks with it. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard like people like the detective aspect of it. Yeah. I just I don't know. Anyone else?
What did you not like about it? Because I
could just go on for days, and that's why I'm like, maybe I missed something. So like I've watched it twice because I watched it the first time when I went to theaters, and then I watched it a second time to start writing the script. And just to keep it short, because I don't know if we're probably gonna be wrapping up soon, but just like the way that he interacts with Catwoman was really annoying to me because he like stops her from having her own agency at every point, but then he also gets rewarded for it. And there's also that scene where like he thinks that she like dated Falcone. So this is like all, if you haven't seen the movie, this is like probably a lot. But like Batman basically thinks that Catwoman dated someone, and she's like, I didn't date this person. And he's like just thinks that she's lying, and he's kind of like a little bit obsessive about it and constantly thinks that he's going to catch her. Yeah, and it was just like weird because it's like she already said that she didn't date this person, and Batman's like, "You're lying to me." And it's like, "Well, Batman, you didn't even tell her your name, and she like you know her name, like she doesn't even know yours. So, like you're being." It just seemed like really entitled, like throughout the whole entire time, and then like Selena finds out that her friend was murdered, so she's like, I'm gonna kill the person who murdered her, and Batman's like, don't do it. And it's just like, Batman, like, let this woman live her life. I felt really annoyed with his whole relationship with Selena, and then he's rewarded for it. And then also just like the just like the way we're like it almost feels like state propaganda, like not just propaganda, but like at the end of the movie, like Bella Real, who I think you're supposed to like. I mean, I kind of like her, but like she's saying, like we need to have faith in our and trust in our politicians and institutions. And I'm like, well, the city is flooded. Like, why would you even say that? Like, that's kind of like what got you here is a broken. Like, the system is fundamentally broken. We don't need to like spend more time having faith in this system. We actually like have to just create something different because the system is fundamentally broken. And they frame everything as like a few bad apples. Like if the politicians just weren't evil. And also they specifically like say that Gordon's a good cop, and most of the police force is working for this mobster, but there's a few good cops in there. And it's like, no, this system is fundamentally broken. And they explicitly like say this, and it's just kind of like a slap in the face after everything that's happened, or like the state of like just throughout the pandemic, like politicians being messed up. And after like the uprising that's happened, to go out of your way to be like, oh, cops, it's just a few bad apples. And so like there's just like things that like the movie explicitly says where I'm just like, this feels like state propaganda to me. And then also like with the Riddler, I'm almost done. Like there's like one thing with the Riddler, like I think he's coded as someone who is neurodivergent or someone who's like on the autism spectrum. And it was just like ableist as fuck. It was like so ableist, and it really bothered me. And then also like with the Riddler, I feel like they're trying to say, because like the Riddler's like killing politicians, and I'm like, is he the bad guy? I don't know, because like Batman's like getting in his way, and I'm like, maybe Batman's the bad guy because he's stopping this person. Anyways, blah blah blah. he's killing all these politicians who are corrupt, and then he's framed as like this really like crazy person. And I feel like, so like, but then like the public is like actually siding with the Riddler, which is interesting because the public's like hates Batman, but the public sides with the Riddler, meaning that like the public is fed up with politicians being corrupt and not, and like all this like wealth, wealth inequality that's happening. And the Riddler is kind of like framed as like this person where it's like, if you're someone who takes matters into your own hands, then like you're basically like the Riddler. Like I think it sends this message of like, don't take matters into your own hands. Like they literally say at the end of the movie to trust the system. And for some reason, Bruce the billionaire is someone who can take matters into his own hands. And yeah, but the Riddler's going too far, but Bruce isn't. And it's just like kind of ridiculous because I think Bruce isn't because he is a billionaire. He decides to kind of help, like he places his hope in the system, which is weird because like they don't place his hope in the people. They place it specifically in like he wants to help Bella Real and he wants to help these politicians. And so to me, it felt like state propaganda that was like meant to pacify people because of all the civil unrest that happened. I think it was like intentionally that, but all of that added up to me like not like the movie. Like even though his character development was like, you should have hope instead of vengeance and stuff. It just, the hope was also like in the system, which is like was fundamentally flawed. And so for me, like I'm making a video essay talking about that. And yeah, I hope that wasn't too much of a rant, but
I'm excited.
Excited
for your video now.
But let me know if there's something that I missed too, because I know people love it a lot, and I could also be missing something.
I also barely remember. Like it was long, and I was just like, my brain only picked up the parts that I cared about, and it's like you watched it twice, I think. So it's like, the thing about long films is you're like, oh yeah, I forgot this thing was in there, and this thing was in there, and it's like, hey everybody, if you rewatch it, you're like, oh no, this has so much propaganda. I feel like that's a genuine.
I just wanted to say, so I didn't watch the new Batman movie. I'm not really big into superhero films. I did though, like when I was like growing up, my dad was really into comics, so I've had a lot of exposure to Batman as a franchise overall. And I think something interesting is this is kind of a lingering issue that I think exists in every single incarnation of Batman. Pretty much all of them are problematic in one way or another. Like, for example, even the Dark Knight treads the same ground. The Joker is a character who is taking matters into their own hand nihilistically, like committing random acts of violence to destabilize a system that he sees as corrupt. I feel like that film, though, like that idea of like having a hope versus nihilism works better because the Joker as a villain is completely nihilistic and doesn't actually believe in having a sensible agenda. And it seems weird that this film, from it sounds like, is the Riddler does have a reasonable and like actually like thought out plan, which kind of shoots this theme in the foot, like at the very get-go. You can't make the argument that Batman isn't the same as the villain if both have actually pretty similar modus operandi and like psychological approaches to their vigilante actions. I don't know. Now I'm very interested in watching it. I might have to give it a look.
I'm gonna definitely rewatch it again and be like, oh fuck, how did this fly over my head? I thought I knew better. I guess I am not immune to propaganda, as the famous lines of the Garfield meme.
Well, I'm glad that people's takeaway isn't hopefully that there's good cops, but I think going back to like the Riddler, he is supposed to be like, I forgot like the literary term, but like he's like kind of serves to show like what Batman, like the Riddler is inspired by Batman, and so
like, is he like a
Batman
foil?
realizes. I think foil is a term, but I can't recall if I'm using that term correctly. But essentially, like Batman says, "I'm vengeance," and so he doesn't say "I'm vengeance, I'm justice." He just says "I'm vengeance," and he inspires fear in people. And at the end of the movie, Batman's character development is realizing that also the Riddler is vengeance, and so Batman's like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm like the Riddler, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to be more hopeful." And that was his character development that he had. And I'm glad he had character development, but his hope, again, was putting his faith in institutions. And that's why I was just like, I don't like this movie. If his hope was to like listen to the people and be like, I'm going to help the people where they're at, and I'm going to be there for the people, then it would have been like, brilliant movie, this is great. But his hope is like, the movie very explicitly ends like, we need to put more hope in our institutions. And that's why I'm just like, I think this is just state propaganda to pacify. I think what's happened is there's been a lot of civil unrest, from both the left and the right. And they made a movie to kind of be like, calm down. We just need to kind of vote for the right people. And if we vote for the right people and if we have good people leading us, then everything will shake out. It just takes time. And I'm like, that is a really messed up message. And I'm kind of ranting now.
Liberal washing kind of way to take a very, I guess, dark themes for superhero films all end up kind of with a very sort of liberal, end up being very liberal in their message, despite being quote unquote edgy,
I was gonna say, like, I think, Lua, if for doing this video, I would also suggest like looking into like original Batman comics, because this is definitely something I've heard about pretty much every iteration of Batman, that they all have this weird dissonance where Batman is a character that fundamentally fights for the status quo, but I'm sure everyone who has ever read a Batman comic knows Gotham is a hilariously corrupt and terrible city that is like constantly in ruin and has probably the worst mental care you could possibly give. And I just think it is funny that like it sounds like this is in some ways like a new iteration. I don't know. I feel like Batman movies come out whenever, like you said, we need a story that tells everyone, chill out, trust the system. But Batman is a story that's always about trust the system that's obviously failing and is punching down everybody who doesn't fit this perfect idea of what it is to be normal. And I don't know. I'm just saying, I think you're definitely getting somewhere, and I don't think you're crazy. I think what you are noticing in this film is, if anything, kind of baked into how I feel Batman has been historically treated.
Yeah, I definitely need to read. Like, I've read like The Killing Joke, which focuses on the Joker, and I've seen some Batman movies when I was younger that I need to revisit, and I was much less critical back then. So I've heard like some of these criticisms have been applied to Batman as long as Batman's existed. As far as I know, there's probably a lot that I don't know about Batman as having not read the comics.
Oh, probably.
But I think what struck me about this, just this movie was so explicit. Like, they were just like clearly like making sure to put in like, Gordon, you're a good cop. And there's a scene where like the police arrest this mobster, and the mobster's like, what, you all work for me? And they're like, we don't all work for you. And it's like showing that there are some good cops. And then, just the politician at the end saying we have to have more faith in our institutions. Like, the movie ending on that note, it was just so explicit. It was so in your face. And like, I was prepared to watch a Batman movie where, there's some propaganda. And yes, we're watching a rich, like, white man, cis man billionaire. And I was actually prepared to just compartmentalize that and see a fun Batman movie and see where Robert Pattinson's career was going. But I saw this and I was like, something about this is so explicit that I don't think I've seen in the other Batman movies. Like, I think in the other Batman movies, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's like kind of just like naturally baked. Like, the issues are like naturally baked in there with like the propaganda. Yeah. But this just felt so like they're like kind of, to me, it felt in your face. And I was just like, I'm gonna make a video.
That sounds much more explicit than they've treated that in the past. And it seems weird because I feel like a lot of Batman iterations have been, if anything, or a lot of them try to get away from this in whatever way they can, whether making this like an implicit element of it or trying, like, this is often why the Joker gets developed a lot more, is as a way of trying to justify their side of things, to almost say, hey, like, we know these problematic implications are within this franchise, but we're gonna kind of lean into talking about that. Like, some Batman media, I feel, does do that. But yeah, this seems to be like almost going in the reverse direction, which now I have to see it. Because because
down
that
to
does
watch
sound
it with
very
you.
interesting.
I'm down to watch it with you.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I would love to see it. Definitely be a good use of that film degree I have lying around.
Gotta get some mileage out of that.
I know we had a really good talk about film,
Yeah.
but
I'm-
I'm super excited for this video, Lua.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
You got
no.
a lot of really good points. And
I'm very interested in what you have to say.
super excited.
Thanks. That makes me really happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that would you say that, because we wanted to get your take on that. I mean, my take on the Batman is just like, it's like again, when I say he's like basically the goth Iron Man, is he's the DC Iron Man, which is he's a billionaire who works directly with the police. They literally shine a symbol in the sky, and then he beats up people that he made impoverished, who are then causing things like muggings and stealing so that they can survive. That is why his parents are not there, and his solution is to go around pretending to solve problems by punching people in the face while being a rich, sad white boy. And there's actually sad, poor black and brown people all over the place, and he doesn't give a shit about any of them. So I mean, it's always like, if I think about it too hard and I don't like kind of like half lobotomize myself, I can't really watch it nowadays, especially. I can't watch any comic book. I can't watch any Western movie. Like, that's basically my whole thing. I can't even watch Stranger Things without thinking about all of the anti-communism cold. I can't.
Yeah.
The Cold Warrior shit coming out of that. I'm like losing my mind in the middle of my. That's why I do these YouTube videos, is to kind of like reassure myself that I am not like. I still have some amount of. I wait for someone in the chat to say, yes, you're right, Silver Spook. And then I
as
go,
soon
oh,
as
that's
they had
right.
like a black child saying that she's like she's like, now I love capitalism.
Yeah, I love
and communism's garbage. And I was like, absolutely.
Oh, you're gonna love.
Like, oh. No. They did a lot of really like things where I was just like, oh, but it's like also like I can't stop watching, because I'm like, this show is like, it's addicting. Like let's be honest. Like, I feel like Stranger Things after season 1 and 2, it's like kind of like eating junk food. You're like, this is, I can't stop. There's so many issues with it.
My mom.
There's continuation.
Yeah, my mom called me to tell me that the new season was out and she was watching it. I was like, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like, that's great.
I'm gonna watch it.
I'll probably watch it.
Oh, I'll watch it, but I'm also gonna be like, this is messed up. About I don't even know what yet, because I haven't seen it. I just know there's gonna be stuff in there where I'm like,
no, look, you're gonna love it.
I'm still gonna watch it.
There's that little black girl is wrapped in an American flag. She's wearing it to the D&D games.
Great.
It's like, I love me some America. And
I just love America and capitalism.
I love that capitalism.
Yeah, that's what a black child in the 80s is going to be going on about. Sure.
It was like,
am I right?
But it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I can tell like 2 40 to 50-year-old millionaire white guys wrote this shit. It's kind of like there's lots of shows like that, and I'm like, oh, so racism is over when a little black girl or somebody saves one of the days, one episode, and now it's fine. And it was really just I remember her speech specifically. America's a land of apple pie, and the USS Butterscotch, and the Statue of Liberty Sunday is here, and I want my Statue of Liberty Sunday. I'm gonna get mine. I'm the boss. Or she didn't say I'm the boss, but she basically said like, I am gonna get mine in capitalism. I'm gonna be like Oprah 2.0. Or she basically like kind of goes on this huge rant, and I was like, holy shit, what kind of bullshit is this writer? And I was like, okay, let me check the rest of my brain out so I can like watch the scary monster, like
that
be
was
well lit.
Very explicit.
Just to kind of go off, I just want to know, how's everyone been being goth during quarantine? Because I know like some people probably aren't going out as much, but I don't say that doesn't stop you from dressing up goth. So how's checking in? Like how's affected the way of being alternative, being just goth, or just your everyday life?
I wear my pajamas every day when I was quarantined, so I definitely was not goth. I was like a disgusting pile of pajamas like the whole time. So
do you think we should create like a subgenre of like goth called pajama goth, where it's just
I'd be into that.
I will say I changed my entire pajama wardrobe to be like a lot more Victorian-esque nightgowns, just to get a bit more of goth aesthetic in there. So that is just what I'm wearing. I one of the reasons I stream in like such extra outfits is because I'm like, well, I'm not going out anywhere else. I have all of these goth clothes and I have nothing to do with them, so might as well wear something a bit extra on camera. Because what club am I going to?
This is the club, you know. Here,
This is the
This
club.
is it.
This
This
is
is
the disco
the-
lights. As my
One day, maybe next goth panel, we should all just wear pajamas and try to be like, let's make pajama goth a thing. Let's make the casual goth as we can.
I am
Goth-
literally wearing pajamas.
I'm ready for it.
That's pajamas. Anyways, I am pajama
What?
goth.
A for effort.
You know, I am the OG pajama
Corporate
goth.
goth.
I'm charging you all
You-
20% for wearing pajamas next time.
I'm not a designer or anything, but now I'm like, yes, I will start a goth pajama label, and that's all that I will sell.
Goth pajama parties.
Goth
Make it-
loungewear.
Goth loungewear, I love it. Gotta make it.
You gotta have ones that like specific for streaming. So it's like you have like the top half look. You got like the 3/4. You got like half full torso goth, and then you can like Velcro off the bottom if you just like I'm just on the camera today. I'm not gonna spend any time down there.
I have a lot of especially like when I'm tired, what I will do sometimes is I'll wear an outfit that's mostly centered around the top, like this. The Shaw is like the actual accent, and normally I would wear a really fancy like skirt with this, but I just have a basic black one because who's gonna see it? Nobody.
Hmm.
The cat maybe.
Cat, yeah, he totally saw it. Say hi to the camera, everybody. Say hi to the camera. Oh,
He's adorable.
he is very cuddly.
Yeah, I feel like if we do, I mean, if people are down to do more of these, we have a good itinerary of things to watch and
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah, that would be fun to like watch a movie and then discuss it. I need to see the one that
Oh,
you were all
yeah.
talking about. What
The
was
Craft?
the
The
which
Craft.
one? The Craft. I need to see that.
I'm totally down. I watch so many movies. So if you all want to pick a movie and then we discuss it, I like talking about movies.
Goth Movie Club sounds ridiculously fun.
That
Yeah,
sounds
I'm so
great.
down.
That's yeah, same.
Oh yeah, by the way, this is my cat Ryden. He's been listening to it all. He's our biggest fan. He's my biggest fan. No, child, no, don't.
Oh,
He's in front of mother.
what's his name?
Ryden.
Ryden.
I'm a Metal Gear Solid fan, so I named him after.
Oh.
Anise knows the story.
I know. Jupiter and I first met and bonded over Metal Gear Solid 2 hyperfixation rants.
Yep, I hate it. And Pathologic.
And Pathologic, right?
Oh, you know what? Is that one of the like gamer girl sad goth games? I don't even know. Honestly, I can't even think what's a good sad goth game.
I think Pathologic is pretty sad goth, given that it is about trying to fight a disease that you can't possibly win against, and everything's dying around you.
Mm. Wow.
It's a good game. I will avoid talking about it because I can talk about it for
Me
literally
and Anise are
hours.
streaming it together.
We are, so that's a good way to check it out.
Good way to plug in your Twitch channel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody follow all of these amazing Twitch streaming goth. Also, indie devs working on a Switch game.
A Switch game, yes.
Like not
Yes.
a Switch game for the Nintendo Switch, Ace Witch game.
That's its unofficial title because I can't name stuff.
It's all right. We'll figure it out.
No, it's all good.
Figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is also it's perfectly in theme with everything that we're doing here. I don't know if there was any Ace Witches in the Craft. I feel like the Craft 2 should have an Ace Witch and the struggle to try to stop people asking for pics of the black, heel clad feet.
Mhm.
That would be a struggle, right? And that's like she becomes goth because she's trying to deal with asshole chuds on Twitch. Anyway,
God.
I give Hollywood that
You know
for free.
there's kind of one character that is like that. There is one character actually like that that I have in mind. So yeah, you jest, but it's true.
Yeah, too real.
Yep. How are we feeling about goth culture now? Let's just.
I give it 6.7 out of 10.
I give it the Mark of the Beast. The Mark of the Beast out of
Four-
10.
4.8 pentagrams out of 5 pentagrams.
Oh yeah, speaking of that, I was just thinking. I was like, actually, I got a lot. I'm always talking about John Romero, but John Romero is he would have been the most eldritch, but also the most famous of all of us BIPOC goths. But he actually said he hinted that like I approve of what you guys are doing. John Romero, the creator, I've talked about him all the time, but he's the creator of Doom, and he is metal as fuck. That guy, like, I have never seen him without black nail polish, and he's at like giving TED talks. He's like giving like Davos speeches, and he's got his black nail polish. He's like, "Fuck all of you, fucking poser ass billionaire philanthropists, crime fighting assholes. You don't fight any crime. I'm John Romero. I'm giving my speech in black nail polish." He's like making that metal horns all the time. Anyways, why did I bring that up? Because I give goth all, I still like, I'm weird about the World Goth Day. Kind of freaked me out a little bit, to be honest, when it's all white people. But I think like I still give it like probably like I give it like 4.5 impaled Romero heads on a spike out of 5.
Yes. The next is have we all attained our goth goals, or are they still growing? Has anyone got like I need to out goth next time or something?
Goth is a continual process, but I need more Lolita chords, but they're so expensive. Too expensive.
Yeah, I wish I could sew, so I could like try to make. Yeah.
You know what? Fun story about that. I actually had to learn recently how to hand sew because one of the buttons fell off one of my cords, and I'm not sure if you've seen Lolita prices, but they are not affordable. So I like was freaking the hell out, and I actually like spent a solid day learning to sew just to sew it correctly. And it's definitely a thing I need to learn if that situation ever happens again.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can sew on like buttons or things like that, but like whenever I use a sewing machine, it's just like all messed up.
Oh yeah, I have no idea. I'm sewing illiterate.
Shout out to all the DIY goths who can sew and fix and hem all of their clothing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just have bad spending priorities and buy clothes over everything else. That's where my goth cred lives.
You're Lolita Goth though. You get that's part of the package.
It's part of the package, and it's also its curse. My wallet is eternally empty.
Just like your head empty?
Yes, exactly. You got it.
Well, Holly's very good at sewing, so if I ever need anything, Holly's always making things, crafting things. Holly's friend is a professional indie wrestling costume designer, so I guess if we ever need something really, really, really fantasy, maybe we'll get hookups. But actually, I don't know how this was made. Holly will answer that in the chat.
Partner who's goth and can sew.
That's Holly doesn't like the camera, so it works out. So I'm the public facing. I am the megalomaniacal, narcissistic weirdo that just puts on all the clothes, and then Holly just makes it and does all the actual work around here, modding and no, we're very appreciative of all the very important work that Holly does around here and taking care of our 2 future goth the little goth spawn or replicants if they're more cyber goth, depending. It is like really nice to have some help with this, because to be honest, like I know I did like a cat eye. I can kind of do cat eye after 2 years. I can do that. I can apply like black lipstick, and then that's about it. But everything else, I can put on a $2.50 Walmart wig on the 75% discount. That's how I got this, by the way. 75% discount day after Halloween. It is the smorgasbord for all of the goth POC out there. So that's my tip.
Oh yeah, I go to Spirit Halloween. I like can't wait.
Spirit Halloween is such an icon. Oh my god.
I actually have like in the Zoom meetings at work, I set my like video like green screen kind of picture to the parking lot of a Spirit Halloween. Even professionally, I'm like, "Hello everybody, I'm here at the last Spirit of Halloween. How y'all doing?"
Does everyone else here have the memory of not being able to afford goth makeup, so you just load up on really cheap makeup at Spirit?
That's what this lipstick is from. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
$5
just gonna
black
stock up.
lipstick coming in.
Mm.
I love it so much. That's where I got like my first really extra eyeshadow palette because I could not afford Sephora or Ulta, but you know, face paint, it works.
Mhm.
I had to bum off like the free samples whenever my mom bought something at Sephora, and like they were like, "Here, take this little eyeliner." I'm like, "I'm taking it. It's mine."
I do that all the time. Basically, every time I see my mom, I'm just like, "You're not using makeup. Give me. I need it."
Yep. Secondhand makeup.
That's a true goth POC experience right there. None of us can afford on brand black lipstick.
I mean, I had to be goth on a budget. I had to go to JCPenney's and get a black hoodie, and that was my emo attire pretty much.
Love it.
I feel like budget goth on a budget is its entire panel. You know, I feel like
I think a fun panel idea would be goth on a budget tips and tricks, how to make an entire wardrobe for like $100. Because I know when I was going through my emo phase, I couldn't afford band t-shirts, but could I afford basic black t-shirts and then one hoodie? Yes, I could.
And then you just find that one striped shirt at like a thrift store, like a Goodwill. You're set for life for that emo aesthetic. That was me. I was like black t-shirts and the one striped shirt that has so many yellow sweat stains.
Don't forget iron-on patches. That's how I had all my MCR merchandise, was I just got my basic black hoodie and I would iron patches onto it. And it's like, good enough.
At least you got the MCR patches. I had a Girl Scout, like a brownie scout vest, and I would cut it and take those patches and put it on my hoodie because I was like, these are patches, right? These look cool.
Okay, but I love that. That's good. I legitimately went through a phase in like freshman and sophomore year where I would just wear like cruddy tees and black ripped jeans. And the tees were always like, I tried to find a graphic tee that was as inscrutable as physically possible. Usually like stuff like it would just be a t-shirt with a pineapple on it, or like some random local sports team from not even in the state. And that was like an entire look at one point.
That has become a look I've noticed with like Gen Z, because that's me and that's my sister and her friends. They went to the Goodwill and they're like, "What's Speed Razor?" It looks like some cheap stock footage of like some local town like tech support company. And she's like, "I don't know. I just thought it was funny, so I'm wearing it." And so like people are just taking those repurposed like company shirts and just wearing them, and I just think that's kind of funny.
That's like the vibe of all like really old 80s, 90s slasher merch, is wearing like shirts for a horror movie that literally nobody has heard about and you can get for like $5 in a bargain bin. I feel like that's why a lot of goths wear, like, or at least have somewhere, horror merchandise, because at one point it was so cheap and easy to find. At least back before my time, when slasher films came out like 20 a year or something stupid like that.
I actually have to get going, so I'm gonna say good night, I think, for most people.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
really nice to hear your in-depth, insightful thoughts about the Batman.
Excited for it.
Thanks.
Way excited for that video now.
oh yeah. I was already
Thanks. Yeah, I
excited.
hope it wasn't like too ranty.
Sorry,
No.
I've been fishing for that this entire stream, so I'm glad that
Oh, really?
No, I'm
Well,
just kidding.
everyone seemed to
sorry,
like it, and I was like,
you.
oh, I like really don't like
Oh,
it.
no, you
And
know,
I
like,
I like,
His hand.
I think we're all just trying to be extra
but
nice, but I think we all kind of like, oh my god, it's kind of. We all kind of know the problems that it had, and I think
Yeah.
like to be honest, I fucking railed against so many Batmans in my time, so don't feel bad about it. Don't feel bad about it, and
I feel bad when I was like, I liked it, and I was like, oh, I
no,
don't
don't
think
feel
you can't say
bad.
you can't like it. I totally get it because that's the legacy of Batman.
I actually don't like Batman,
No, that's
but but whenever I say I don't like Batman, a lot of people get very upset. So I'd rather just
yeah, no, that's
I
this
I
isn't
think
the
it's
upset at
valid.
Batman. It's okay space. That's what that.
this is a Batman. I don't like Batman. Safe space. Don't worry.
Yeah, you can like or
the
not like it.
movie. Yeah, the movie itself seemed fine, but I didn't really like. I don't like the themes of Batman. I feel like he thinks he's Daredevil, but he's not because he's actually a billionaire. But anyway,
Yeah, that's his superpower.
yeah, as
Is
being just
literally
mega
just
rich.
how much money he has.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, I don't like that all of Batman's villains are somehow have like a mental disability of some kind. It's like, oh yeah, it's totally okay to beat up anybody who's not neurotypical because they're
Mhm.
obviously all insane criminals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, gonna say that Scarecrow is a way better goth icon than Batman is. I'm never gonna take criticism on that stance.
He's like the edgier Scream.
Exactly.
I don't know why I said that, but it's a sentence. But yes, have a nice night, Luca.
Yeah.
Yeah, have a nice night.
Yeah, bye
Thank
everyone.
Thank you
you.
so much for
Bye,
Take
coming.
care.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Maybe this might be a good time.
yeah, it's a good time to
Yeah.
probably be heading on. It's like we're almost 3 hours, but I don't want to end it because I know this is like it's good times and good vibes and dark vibes all around. But yeah, so yeah, we will be we'll think about the future. We'll be talking about the future ones. Possible other all goth panels or whatever sort of panels we put on. But yeah, if you guys want to just go ahead and kind of say your any closing final thoughts, anything you want to shout out, etc.
Goth girls for life. But also goth goals. Make pajama goth a thing. Also, Ryendys, I see your skateboard. That is a really nice skateboard.
Oh,
is.
thanks. It's my roommate's.
Oh, well, it looks it makes it makes your like set with like the purple lighting like really pop out as a nice contrast. It's very pretty. I
Oh,
like it.
thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't have any closing remarks. We already kind of.
Oh no, yeah. If you
No,
guys,
go ahead.
yeah, no. If you kind of cover what you wanted to say, it's all good. But if you want to just I think we talked I briefly hinted at the A Switch game and then your Twitch streams, but you want to kind of like more directly say like when you guys, I think you're streaming tomorrow or possibly.
So yeah, Twitch shout out time. You can follow me at twitch.tv/Anise Idolin. My next stream is gonna be Tuesday. I typically stream Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 PST and Saturdays at 6 PST. And on Saturdays you can tune in and watch Jupiter and I play Pathologic if you've never heard of this.
My horrible New Yorker accent for the main character.
So if you like really chaotic streams, give me a follow. I'd appreciate it. And I'll let you pitch a Switch game, Jupiter.
Switch game is a work in progress, and hopefully I can start on development again now that I have a new setup to help with programming. So yeah, you can follow me at Jupiter Doomsday on Twitter to every once in a while see me post work in progress screenshots, maybe even threads about the development process of it.
Awesome. I do recommend. I've been following. Like I said, I've been following Jupiter for a while. We finally got to do a schedules workout where we got to stream. Got to be in a stream together in April for the first Goth panel. But I've been following the game for a while. Try to keep an eye out for like indie games and other games that look yeah, games that look like they're interesting and cool, made by really cool developers and people that are doing great work. So at some point we might have another game dev panel. I just did one, but I was like, sorry, I was like, I'm putting like 3 or 5 different things up all at the same time sometimes, so I'm like getting confused because you guys are like goth alt game developers and also like 5 other things that you could be in. So
Multi-talented people.
one of these days we'll get you guys in the game dev specific one, and then anyways, so I'm gonna stop talking to myself. But yeah, thanks so much, and yeah, do check out the Ace Witch game and check out all the Twitch streams. I was in for one of those Twitch streams, and I want to say, very well done voice acting. I was very convinced. I was very compelled. I was very entertained by your voice acting. I'm not joking. I'm serious. I'm not just making fun of your voice acting.
I am a professional voice actress, so
Jupiter is a professional.
I'm not, so I'm going to take that compliment with full force. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, anyway, sorry, Ryendys. Yeah, go ahead and yeah.
Oh, yeah, I feel like seeing the perspective of other Mexican American goth people is I always value it because I feel like our experiences overlap, but then there are also things that other people experience that I don't, and I like to hear their perspective. I think this is really great, and I've enjoyed the panels, everything that we talked about. Definitely want to connect more, and I shared some links too, if you want to check them out there in the group Goth panel chat.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Feel free to drop and share anything. I know, like last time, Jupiter, you shared a bunch of alternative goth emo
black-owned fashion companies.
Mm-hmm.
So feel free to share any more of those types of things that you want. If I think of anything, I will as well. But it's been really great. So I'm really glad I started. I almost didn't do that all goth thing. I was just like, I don't know, is that really people? Are there any all goths out there that are people of color other than me? I don't know why I had that ridiculous thought. That's the colonization. That's the imposter syndrome colonial garbage right there. But I'm glad that I did. So yeah, it's been really great. Always we're always going like way over. I'll be real. Like we go the most overtime on these of all the panels for good reason. I think there's a good reason because it's things that you don't encounter, and so it's very. I think it really is very important. It's important for me. I learned every time I do this. Between the last one and this one, I've like learned a lot of things, and I'm like, is this for real? And I'm like saying it out loud, and everybody's like, and I'm like,
yes.
Oh shit, that's for real. Like, I'm not just imagining this stuff in my own mind. I'm not just being like. You can stop being gaslit for on things. I think that's a weird way to say a very positive thing. I know, but
yes,
it definitely helps with the imposter syndrome to know that other people feel the same thing within goth spaces, and I'm not crazy.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So
Yeah, definitely.
anyways, so I think that's a good place to cut it off. I'm going to stop the stream. So let's give our best witchy or scary. I don't know how you send off in that. Do your Elvira wave or your. Okay, everybody. Thanks for. I'm sorry.
Good night, everybody.
I'm putting you all on the spot.